Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Kyubi gives power to Naruto and becomes powerful part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. At the beginning of the second phase of the Chunin exams, Team 7 was actually quite confident that they would pass the exam with no problem. Sasuke was considered a genius amongst the Genins, and he already awakened his Sharingan. Naruto was cocky in his own right, but he had his fair share of useful skills to be used in a crowded place like the training ground number 44, better known as the Forest of Death. Sakura, for the likes of her, couldn't stop trembling as she looked around the darkness that loomed over these parts, wondering if they would encounter some wild beast, like a gigantic tarantula or man-eating tigers. Not to mention meeting the actual opposition. As only a support to her team, Sakura often relied on either Naruto or Sasuke to help her whenever she was in trouble. Sure, she was branded as a genius scholar with high grades and rumored to have skills in both chakra control and genjutsu techniques. But several factors ruined the girl's unstoppable potential, one of the reasons being herself, obviously. Ever since the academy, she fawned over her Uchiha teammate, and it only got worse when she was selected as a member of Team 7. Much to her sensei's irritation, instead of training to get stronger, Sakura ended up either fawning on Sasuke or asking said genin for a date. Of course, if had a Kakashi, the man known as the Sharingan no Kakashi, who copied more than 1,000 techniques, easily disrupted the girl's fangirlish tendencies by actually training his team, then the story would be different. However, due to certain occurrences in the past, all he ever thinks about is building them into a team that never should have got together in the first place. Now, though, they would spend 5 days inside this god-forsaken forest, facing wild beasts and shinobi from other lands, both of them with full intent to kill Team 7 in order to get the scroll they possessed. Her heart even skipped a beat when the team encountered another team from a Megacure. It didn't take too long seeing as Sasuke launched a fireball technique at the three without warning, catching one of them easily. The other two were dealt with by Naruto's cage buncheons. None of the three were killed, except that the one that received the fire technique was unconscious, with third-degree burns all over his body. Naruto screamed to the heavens at his team's awesomeness before searching for the team's scroll. Sasuke and Sakura were actually anxious to see if this team had the Earth Scroll, meaning they only needed to go to the tower and be done with the exam. "Ah, I found it, Dadabeo." Shit is the Heaven Scroll, the blonde screamed at the top of his lungs before the team vanished once more. The first fight served a purpose, though. They now were more confident than before and in no time, they would battle a team with the Earth Scroll. However, such confidence was shattered when they landed on top a thick tree only for a strong blast of wind to send them flying, Naruto to one direction and Sakura to another. When Naruto landed, he caressed his bottom a few times in order to stop the pain before looking around for his teammates. The only things before his eyes were gigantic trees before a gigantic snake appeared out of nowhere. The blonde screamed frightened before his determined resolve was in control. However, he only had time to grab one kunai from his holder before the snake lunged at him and opened its jaws, swallowing him whole. But Sasuke. As soon as Sasuke landed on the ground, he began to look for his teammates. Sakura appeared first before she gave the password that Sasuke invented in case they split up. After being assured that Sakura was indeed Sakura, he began to look for Naruto while wondering about that Futon technique. That wind blast was much too powerful to be used by a mere genin. After looking around for a bit, Naruto's voice alerted them to his position before they saw Naruto resting his right hand on a tree while the other he used to hold his apparently injured stomach. "Hey, are you guys okay?" Naruto asked before Sasuke raised the kunai in a threatening manner. "The password, what's the password? When a ninja is supposed to strike?" The blonde looked at his teammate in question before he showed an ear-to-ear grin. "Ah yes, I know that it is a good chance when a large number of enemies are making a scene. There are no hideouts even in a quiet place. It is important for a ninja to know the right time. The time is when the enemy is tired and his guard is down." As soon as Naruto finished the password, Sakura took a long breath in relief. Sasuke for his part smiled before suddenly throwing the kunai straight at Naruto's face. So surprised he was that the blonde threw himself to the ground in order to dodge the kunai. Both him and Sakura demanded questions for his actions, but Sasuke remained with the arrogant smirk on his face. "Don't play ignorant with me. Our Naruto, the real Naruto, would never memorize such a long password. I admit that you're better at the henge and even skilled to dodge the kunai from such a close distance, but still you failed in mirroring Naruto's mannerisms." No sooner that Sasuke explained his actions, Naruto, or rather someone transformed as him, started laughing like a hyena before licking his lips as if he was staring at a most tasty dish. The fake Naruto got up and immediately dispelled the illusion before a great torrent of smoke filled the area, revealing the enemy. It was a woman by the looks of things, carrying the insignia from Kusagakure. She was rather tall to be just a genin. Her black hair was long and every time she looked at Sasuke, she would lick her lips in anticipation. It was as if Sasuke was the meal of the day. Activating his Sharingan, Sasuke didn't wait for the attack and charged the woman into jutsu. He started with a series of punches and kicks, but no one got across her fluid defensive maneuvers. The Kusa genin even smiled before grabbing Sasuke's arms and throwing him against a tree. The Uchiha backflipped, using the tree as leverage for chagrining her once again. This time he grabbed a kunai and attacked his opponent. It was useless, however, as she was clearly toying with him the entire time. Sasuke had enough of this fight before he gained some distance and initiated the hand seal sequence. Heiten Gakakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release. Great Fireball Technique. The blazing inferno charged at the Kusa genin, who for her part only smiled as the technique approached its intended target. She made no effort to move out of the way, giving Sasuke the idea that he had defeated his opponent. However, as soon as the smoke settled, the enemy just stood behind a tree still carrying the wicked smile on her face. Sasuke, by this time, was getting nervous and charged. This time, the Kusa genin just took the fight to higher grounds, while Sasuke was in hot pursuit. He eventually reached her, but he hadn't managed to land even one blow. The woman tried aiming a straight kick to his chest, which sent him flying a couple trees away. He managed to use chakra to stand on the tree before he ran to a clear path where he grabbed a couple of mid-sized shuriken laced with invisible wire. He didn't throw the shurikens directly at his opponent but around her. At first, the woman thought that Sasuke's aim needed improvement and she even taunted him in said manner, only for a smirk to appear on his face as he pulled the invisible wire of the shurikens, turning their trajectory, surprising the aim genin. The invisible wire ended up tying her to a thick tree and she found out she couldn't move. The wire constricted her movements. Sasuke, afterward, gathered all the wire and held them in place with his mouth before going through a long series of hand seals for his strongest fire technique ever attempted on the battlefield. Heiten Ryuka no Jutsu, Fire Release. Flame Dragon Technique. Sasuke started burning before he directed the gathering fire through the wires that were holding his enemy. Upon impact, she screamed as the pain from the attack was too much for even her to handle. The technique even went on the other side of the tree, like it was an unstoppable force. After that, Sasuke breathed in relief. He had never faced this type of enemy before. No matter what he did, she was always 1 or 2 steps ahead of him. Images of his uselessness against his brother the night of his clan genocide flashed through his eyes. However, to his shock and utter fear, the woman appeared in front of him like she wasn't even fazed by his strongest technique, just as Sakura appeared next to him. They could see, however, that her face appeared to be melting. Fukuku, good Sasuke-kun. Very good, you are indeed very talented for someone your age. Now, why don't you say we increase the level of our fight was the next thing they heard before both Sasuke and Sakura were bombarded with images of their death. But Naruto. The snake was having its fun digesting Naruto while the blonde was busy screaming some obscenities that would make even Anko proud. However, even he was smart enough to realize that he didn't have much time left. His body was already covered with enough gastric juice that his clothes were being digested by the minute. Pretty soon his skin would as well, unless he did something. It was such a grotesque sight inside the snake's stomach. He couldn't see much, but he could see the rest of the snake's quite peculiar diet. He saw enough to realize that he wasn't the first human to be in there. No matter how much he thought, though, he couldn't figure out how to escape until an idea hit him. It was more like a desperate move than anything. Any movement was being restricted by the snake's organs, but he managed enough strength to at least join his hands to form his most familiar hand seal. It's all or nothing. Take this, you damn snake. Hajiu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Multiple Shadow Clone Technique. One by one, Naruto used his technique without concern of saving chakra. In no time, the snake's stomach ended up inflating like a balloon before the deadly creature was ripped apart. Naruto, still covered with gastric acid, coughed multiple times while imagining the consequences of not escaping. The thought of death wasn't alien to him. When his team faced the demon brothers, Naruto was frightened. At the time, he froze and if it wasn't for Sasuke's help, he doubted that he would still be amongst the living. Now, that old feeling returned. Okay, it shouldn't be a routine situation. It's not every day that you become snake's food, but as a shinobi, he needed to be prepared to face odds such as this. Shaking his head in denial, Naruto started looking around for either Sasuke or Sakura. He began looking around the vicinity before Sakura's scream reached his ear. Sakura-chan is in trouble, I must go immediately. But Sasuke and Sakura. After Orochimaru used that strange technique, he just settled for 2 kunes and threw them at the still frightened genins. Sasuke saw the kunes, but could do nothing. He, then, grabbed a kunai of his own and pierced his own thigh in order to somehow wake him up from the trance Orochimaru placed them in. Quickly, he grabbed Sakura, saving her from the kunai. Still, Orochimaru pressed on his taunting attack, forcing Sasuke on the defensive. The raven-haired genin was beginning to cower in fear upon seeing a snake appear behind him. Sasuke screamed at his opponent, more like begging him to leave him alone, before throwing various shurikens at the snake, killing it. However, once more Orochimaru appeared from within the snake, licking his lips while doing so. "You can't let your guard down, Sasuke-kun. A prey needs to strain their minds all the time and run around in the presence of the predator," Orochimaru said, before extending his body like a snake and charging at Sasuke. However, before he could reach the already cowering Sasuke, a few kunes and shurikens appeared in front of him, stopping his path just as Naruto shouted. "Boy, sorry I was late, Sasuke. I had to deal with something on the way here." Naruto shouted as Orochimaru looked at the blonde, wondering what happened to the snake he sent to deal with the annoying brat. Still, Naruto's presence did little to alleviate Sasuke's feeling of insecurity. So far, every time Naruto appeared, he ended up screwing things up. Thing was that right now, Kakashi wasn't here to fix the dope's mistakes. He was at a loss of what to do before a cowering idea appeared inside his mind. It was beneath his pride as an Uchiha to even think in such a thing, but this foe, whoever he or she was, is way above their level and could easily kill them. "Wait a minute," Sasuke called, before reaching for the scroll inside his holster. "In exchange for letting us go, we surrender our scroll to you." "There, take it," Sasuke said, much to Sakura and Naruto's shock and confusion. Orochimaru just smirked at the brat's cleverness. "Smart kid, in order to save yourself, you give the predator something more precious in return." However, it seems that the Uchiha clan's pride is non-existent. If the heir acts all cowardly like this, the obvious jab was meaningless when compared to Sasuke's survival at this point. "Just take it and leave," he threw the scroll towards Orochimaru, who smirked as he watched the artifact approaching his position slowly. When the snake was about to get it, though, the scroll suddenly vanished as Naruto appeared on the tree next to them holding the scroll. Sasuke was beyond pissed at the blonde for his stupidity, as he shouted for the blonde to give the scroll to the enemy immediately. Naruto took a moment to look at Sasuke like he grew a second head and sneered at his cowardice. This wasn't the Sasuke he knew, and the one that was a part of Team 7. "Boy team, are you crazy? Giving up the scroll would be like saying we didn't pass, damn it. I want to pass and I know you want to as well." Naruto knew that talking would be ineffective, thus he needed to get his point across. However, the fact that Sasuke so easily gave up made his blood boil. This wasn't the Sasuke he knew, nor the one he kept challenging all the time. He was just a scared little rabbit. Gathering as much strength as he could muster, Naruto landed a fierce punch on Sasuke's face, sending him flying. No one could see his eyes at the time of the hit. "What's the matter with you, damn it? Quit trying to become the hero," shouted Sasuke before something inside of him urged him to stop breathing. This feeling of dread, it was similar to the time he faced Zabuza. He looked at Naruto, only to gasp as the blonde's eyes was changed. They were red silted eyes that promised anything but death. "You're definitely now the Sasuke I know. You're just some scared cat trying to save its own ass. I'm dealing with this enemy and we are going to pass this exam," Naruto said before he grabbed a kunai and charged a still smirking enemy. Orochimaru just summoned one of his snakes one more time and ordered it to pound Naruto. The problem, though, was that now Naruto was, even if unconsciously, using the fox's chakra, alerting Orochimaru instantly. He saw Naruto punching the snake hard and he felt instantly the same feeling from 12 years ago when the very Kyubi no Yoko appeared in Konoha. So, this is the Kyubi brat. Such remarkable power, maybe branding him as well isn't such a bad idea. He could prove useful in the future. Just as Naruto managed to break the snake's jaw, he saw the snake disappearing and licked his lips once more. Meanwhile, Sasuke and Sakura were wondering when Naruto had ever shown such power. Naruto, then, charged a snake Sannin in disguise, only for the man's tongue to envelope Naruto's body. The blonde tried fighting with all his might to free himself from Orochimaru's grasp. However, the man had enough chakra focused on his tongue to hold Naruto at bay, even if he was subconsciously using the fox's chakra. Such strength only managed to further Orochimaru's interest in using Naruto against the very village that raised him. Without further ado, he lowered Naruto's body until the blonde was in front of him. Orochimaru sunk his teeth in Naruto's neck with much strength that the blonde screamed in agony. The poison instantly ran through his veins, and before Naruto knew, he was unconscious as a strange-looking seal appeared behind his neck. Naruto-kun's strength will be better channeled by the same seal that Kimimaro-kun has. Now, for Sasuke's, I'll give him the same one I gave little Anko. This is more refined, increasing more his chakra than his strength. It will be perfect for his techniques in the future. Now, let's brand Sasuke. As soon as he turned towards the still stunned Sasuke, he threw Naruto towards the ground hard. Sasuke tried moving, but Orochimaru still had his Genjutsu activated, meaning Sasuke couldn't move. Sakura even tried to help by throwing a kunai, but Orochimaru just used 2 fingers to stop as he extended his neck towards the Uchiha before biting him as well. Sasuke screamed in agony as the poison ran through his veins as the cursed seal appeared behind his neck as well. Orochimaru started laughing silently as he pondered on how much his odds improved. Sasuke-kun's strength and mastery of the Sharingan is terrific. He'll prove to be a better host than anyone, plus I finally will take possession of the Sharingan. Furthermore, I can use the fox's chakra in Naruto. No one will stop me from my goal. You monster, who are you and what did you do to Sasuke and Naruto? Sakura had tears in her eyes and she was trembling, which further increased Orochimaru's mood as he laughed at Sakura. My name is Orochimaru and I only gave the 2 of them a nice little present. In time, both of them will seek me for power and I'll be waiting. Till we meet again, ku. While laughing, Orochimaru sunk below the tree, using a Doton evasion technique, leaving poor little Sakura to help both her teammates. Barely 1 day has passed since Team 7's most frightening experience so far and the only conscious member of the team had to take care of the other 2 for the time being. Haruno Sakura took both Sasuke and Naruto to a small hideout below the roots of a tree nearby. Whatever that monster Orochimaru did, Sasuke and Naruto became incredibly sick afterwards. Both of their foreheads were burning up, indicating a fever, the likes of which she'd only read about in books, and it frightened her greatly. Here she was alone in the middle of a forest filled with man-eating creatures. What would happen if she had to defend herself against a gigantic carnivore, say for instance, a bear or a tiger, or even something hideous like a tarantula? Just the thought of seeing a man-sized spider with hairy legs approaching her was frightening enough. Not to mention the fact that until one of them woke up, her team was vulnerable against other attacks. Suddenly, she heard the distinguishing glow of flesh being burned and flinched upon hearing Sasuke's moan of pain while unconscious. Upon close inspection, she could see the damn seal imprinted on his neck glowing. She touched his forehead and was shocked to feel that it was hotter than before. Picking up another wet towel from a bucket next to her, she replaced the old one before sighing in dismay for probably the 10th time today. The amount of killing intent shown by Orochimaru shocked her to her very core and after the fight, she was exhausted even though she barely moved at all. In spite of that, she couldn't just close her eyes and fall asleep. In doing that, she'd be just proving how useless she's been to the team so far. Taking care of their health as much as possible was the only thing she could do, while praying that their position wasn't found by either the enemy or by the peculiar wildlife of this forest. Looking at her other partner, she wondered why the blonde wasn't feeling the same pain as Sasuke, seeing as his seal was glowing as well. The different designs between seals intrigued her. Being a scholar, Sakura had knowledge above her skills, but Fuinjutsu wasn't covered at the academy. Inside Naruto's mind. When Naruto opened his eyes, frightened, he didn't expect to be where he was now. He remembered losing his consciousness at the Forest of Death when that damn snake pedophile bit him on his neck. He expected to wake up and see trees and hear the noise of nature, but instead he appeared in some kind of sewer, and all he could hear was the echo of water drops falling. He walked around the narrow corridors while looking at the red pipes that seemed to fill the walls. The interval between water drops gave him a very spooky imagination, and he could feel a strange sense of animosity in this place, strange as that may sound, since it appeared that he was alone. Naruto. The whispered voice, calling him, frightened the blonde tremendously. He looked around, but couldn't see anything, apart from water and narrow corridors. Still, for some unfathomable reason, his legs moved on their own towards one of the corridors. He wondered why this was happening, why he was here and where here was, for that matter. He couldn't understand a thing as his legs took him throughout the narrow corridors. The whisper intensified, still calling his name as he could now feel a malice, like he never felt before. Not even that Orochimaru guy could produce such a feeling, and Naruto, until now, figured that Orochimaru was the most powerful enemy he would face. The voice now changed its speech, and it scared the blonde even more. Naruto, so you came to see me at last. Come and meet your doom, follow the path of blood. As soon as he heard it, Naruto looked down and realized that instead of water, the path in front of him had a red color. He wouldn't dare assume that he was walking in a pool of blood. This experience, so far, has been freaky enough without that. The blonde walked, probably 5 more minutes, before he entered what probably was the last corridor as the path in front of him ended in some gigantic room, and he could see a black void at the end of the room, behind what appeared to be a gigantic prison. The man who constructed this hell of a place must be nuts, Naruto reasoned as he stepped inside the room. As soon as he entered inside the spacious room, Naruto was surprised to see that he gained control over his legs once more. The area was filled with animosity as he walked towards the seemingly empty cage in front of him. He wondered why such a large cage was made and who was it made for. The boy sure lacked in the brain department, but even he could tell that this cage wasn't meant for a human being or any animal he knew. He suddenly lost his breath once 2 red slitted eyes appeared from out of nowhere, looking down at him. The eyes were easily a great distance from the floor, and the blonde did the same thing everyone would do upon realizing that a gigantic beast was face to face with him. He started trembling in fear. When the teeth showed as well as the following killing intent, Naruto just wasn't able to breathe properly. The creature, in front of him, seemed to enjoy itself upon feeling fear and despair in front of him after so long trapped inside this body. The creature took a step further so as to show to its host the full appearance of the monster that he kept jailed all these years, only knowing about it recently because of a bloody chunin. As soon as the fox's full image appeared in front of Naruto, he gasped while trying to speak its name. He knew the image of the fox thanks to the academy books. The oppressing figure caused the blonde to fall on his butt as he couldn't believe that the almighty Kyubi no Yoko was in front of him. He remembered the bastard Mizuki saying that he was a Jinchuriki, thus the jailer of the Kyubi. Suddenly, he didn't feel so good. So it seems my jailer has come to meet me at last. Naruto recognized underestimation when he saw one, and, despite being a demon, the strongest of the tailed beasts, something within Naruto always took action once he felt he was being looked down upon. With a new resolve, he got up from the pool of blood and looked at the fox's eyes for the first time since entering the room. The fox noticed with quite amusement how its jailer was attempting to show a courageous side. It seems that, once more, you are in need of my help. You should have bowed at the presence of the almighty Kyubi no Yoko. Because of the pressure inside this strange chamber, when Naruto spoke, it came out weak. However, he cleared his throat a bit and addressed the fox as if he could talk to a demon like he would to a human being. Hey you damn fox, who are you to demand me to do stuff, huh? I don't know how the hell I got in here, but Kami knows that if I could choose, I'd prefer never to see your face. As soon as he realized just whom he was addressing to, he regretted his words. The fox's eyes narrowed at the blonde and Naruto felt as if the creature would eat him alive. The fox, for its part, never once saw such blatant disrespect coming from a pathetic midget. He'd kill the foe for much less than what Naruto said. Still, the fact that the blonde was here took precedence over throwing insults against each other. Despite everything, though, the fox was experiencing a new sense of amusement at this kid's courage to face the fox. Surely, the fox met tons of men that didn't have his bravery. You should watch your mouth in my presence, you brat. If it wasn't for this cage, you'd be eaten. Now, I believe it's high time we discussed what that cursed snake branded you with. The memory of Naruto being beaten came full force as the symbol of the cursed seal appeared on the wall near the cage. Surely it was amplified because the real seal wouldn't take an entire wall. It started glowing red all of a sudden and the blonde felt a strong pain running through his system. Indeed, that snake placed this seal on us with the sole purpose of using us in the future. It's a masterpiece, the likes of which was used to seal me inside you pathetic child. What can we do? Can we take it off, destroy it or something? It's really hurting me. Only an imbecile wouldn't accept the power that radiates from this seal. In normal occasions, I would simply get rid of it by focusing a drop of my energy. From what I can see, it has some sort of attachment to the caster. Instead of destroying it, I'll bend it so that you can use it without the repercussions. You can thank me later, Brad. Immediately afterwards, the fox's aura appeared from beneath the creature and, slowly but surely, reached the seal. Upon contact, Naruto had to close his eyes not to be blinded by the sudden light that engulfed the chamber. When the light dimmed down, Naruto looked back at the seal, only to see that instead of the black ink, the seal was red. As Naruto observed the seal, Kyubi explained the changes made by him. Naruto was now able to activate the seal without worrying about the repercussions such as rage or losing control to Orochimaru's will. The genin didn't have time to question the fox as he was expelled from the confines of his mind to the outside world. As soon as he opened his eyes, a red aura engulfed him, shocking the audience at feeling, once more, the same level of power radiating from another person. Even the other influenced by the cursed seal was surprised upon seeing Naruto. While Naruto was talking to the fox, a team from Itagakure chose this moment of weakness to attack Team 7 and, thus, Sakura had to step up and defend her team. Of course, she didn't have a chance against 3 high-level genins and was captured easily. It was only due to the sudden appearance of a year-older genin called Rock Lee that Sakura's chances of survival improved. However, due to a sound attack, Rock Lee was incapacitated. However, when this happened, his teammates Neji and Tenten arrived to assist and even Team 10 arrived as well. They were about to engage the enemy and Sakura's assistance when Uchiha Sasuke awakened, surrounded by a malevolent purple aura. His skin was covered with black markings and he had an evil smile on his face. His presence alone frightened 2 of the Oto genins. The other named Zaku tried to act bravely before Sasuke appeared behind him and broke his arms, still maintaining that devilish smirk on his face. Sakura couldn't stand any more of this new Sasuke and moved to hug him, begging him to stop. However, she froze when she felt the same energy that radiated from Sasuke coming from another location. Upon turning, she saw her other teammate getting up. Naruto, upon registering what was happening in front of him, wondered what was happening. He saw ninjas from Konoha and a team that carried a different insignia. He saw that Sakura was badly injured and immediately was on edge. He saw Sasuke as well, and he was filled with strange marking on his face. Of course, he couldn't see that his face was covered with marking as well, red ones, courtesy of the cursed seal of earth altered by the Kyubi. His mind concluded that he was to deal with the Otogaku genins first. He turned to the closest one, the one with bandages on his head, and vanished. He appeared in front of the shocked man and landed a strong fist on his face, which sent him flying. Everyone, including Sasuke, was shocked at the speed, although the Uchiha was perhaps the only one who was able to follow it. Suddenly a smirk appeared on his face as he attacked the one with a broken arm. Zaku couldn't do anything and received a similar blow on his face. He was unconscious soon afterwards, leaving only the woman of the team awake to deal with the cursed duel. Kin realized that the odds of her receiving the same treatment were pretty high, thus she gave her team's earth scroll to Sakura and escaped. Sasuke moved to stop her, but Naruto appeared in front of him, stopping his movements. Naruto now knew what Kyubi was saying to him. Contrary to his sense of calm, Sasuke's face was pure evil. "We don't need to attack her, Sasuke. We have the scroll we need to pass." A shocked audience just watched as the energy surrounding Naruto and Sasuke vanished. The male members of Team 7 just observed one another for some time. Sasuke now remembered that Naruto was bitten by Orochimaru as well and smirked at the blonde. For quite some time, all he wanted was to find someone worthy to prove his skills against. Naruto, despite being the class loser, slowly became stronger, and now both shared something that would only make him stronger in the future. Naruto would be the one he would defeat before aiming for his brother. Perhaps, Naruto could be the one he needed to awaken the next step of the Sharingan. "I can see that you possess great power in you, Naruto. From now on, you'll be my rival for power. I'll test myself against you, so you better be prepared." With the animosity gone, the people around them relaxed. Ino offered to fix Sakura's hair, while Choji and Shikamaru began the conversation. Sasuke and Naruto created some distance between each other. Neji, Lee and Tenten already left towards the tower, since their presence was no longer required. 20 minutes later, both teams went towards the tower together, since both of them had the 2 scrolls collected. And I know that Team 7 had to collect another scroll, because in canon, Orochimaru swallowed theirs. But remember that in Chapter 1, Naruto retrieved the scroll. Orochimaru didn't take it. The trip towards the tower resumed without a single word spoken from Team 7. Naruto was strangely quiet all of a sudden, while Sakura looked at her 2 teammates, wondering what happened to them. She remembered that, like Sasuke, Naruto was bitten as well, and it worried her greatly. What would happen to them now? She remembered what Orochimaru said to her after biting her teammates. Flashback on. "My name is Orochimaru, and I only gave the 2 of them a nice little present. In time, both of them will seek me for power and I'll be waiting. Till we meet again, Kukuku." Flashback off. She didn't know what to do, nor did she know if she was supposed to do anything. She loved Sasuke more than life itself, and Naruto was her teammate as well. But what if she told Kakashi-sensei about it? He would know what to do about this situation. But what if Sasuke resented her for such a thing? Sakura couldn't afford to bear Sasuke's resentment, but it would be worse if he ever abandoned the village and went to Orochimaru for nothing more than power. Naruto was also an issue. Would he go as well? The words of a Sannin couldn't be underestimated, especially not Konoha's #1 criminal. She needed to tell at least Kakashi-sensei about it. Eventually, the 2 teams reached the insides of the tower. Both teams were lost on what to do before Shikamaru came up with the idea of opening both scrolls. The teams complied and opened them before throwing the scrolls a few meters. Suddenly, 2 pillars of smoke appeared from within the scroll, revealing Iruka from Team 7's scroll and the same Chunin that blocked the door at the beginning of the exams called Izumo. Seeing as both of them were summoned at the same time, they decided to rotate for the explanation. Iruka was first. "Congratulations to all of you. You passed the 2nd stage of the Chunin exams. I'm glad that you chose not to open the scrolls before entering the tower. That means you understood the concept behind this exam." "Iruka-sensei, what would happen if we opened before?" Naruto's question was instead answered by Izumo. "The concept behind this exercise is to prove the ninja's resolve. Sometimes, you'll receive a very important document with the order to deliver it to another country, even to another village. Usually, said document is very important, although a ninja is not supposed to read it. However, you'll have to protect it from the village's enemies, still, without even knowing what information was written in it. If you were to open beforehand, it will be presumed that the mission was failed. Thus, if anyone opened the scroll before, would be rendered unconscious by one of the Chunin proctors." Because of the amount of responsibility, some genins decided to fall into temptation and opened the scroll to see what was in it. The explanation was rather long, but Naruto understood. Iruka explained afterwards. Now, for those who passed, I'm required to explain the meaning behind the Heaven and Earth scrolls. If you look at the plaque behind me, it contains a very important message for all of you. If you do not possess heaven, gain knowledge and be prepared. If you do not possess earth, run through the fields and seek strength. If you have both, dangerous paths will turn into safe ones. This is the secret of a Chunin. It shall lead you on your way. The looks on the Genin's faces were priceless. Naruto's was by far the funniest as he was having trouble even understanding some of the words that came out of Iruka's mouth. Seeing the confused looks on your faces, I'll explain. This is the principle Hokage-sama wrote that you all should keep in mind as a Chunin. You must substitute the words heaven and earth for knowledge and strength. For example, if Naruto's weak point is his brain, then he should study and prepare for missions. At this, Iruka heard Naruto mumble something while Sakura laughed at him despite everything, but Iruka ignored and continued the explanation. Also, if Sakura and Ino's weak point is strength, then both should train themselves every day. Thus, if you possess both heaven and earth or knowledge and strength, then any dangerous missions will become safe. It can even become easy, depending on the mission. Now, seeing as there is still time for the exams, we'll guide you to a place where you can take a rest. Please follow us. The two teams smirked at the explanation before they followed the two Chunins towards their accommodations. They had at least 3 more days to rest before the exams were over. Sakura chose to take a long shower while Naruto went to eat something. Sasuke went on his way to God knows where. Team 10 decided to just rest and save their energy for what will happen next. Now alone, while asking for some ramen, Naruto pondered on the cursed seal and what Kyubi said to him. This power was tainted, he knew that. Despite it all, Kyubi made it so that he didn't suffer the consequences of its usage. However, while his problem was solved, Sasuke's wasn't. He remembered Sasuke's face with the cursed seal active and he wondered what would have happened if he wasn't there to stop the Uchiha. 3 days later. Inside a rather spacious room located within the confines of the tower, 2 people were located as they were discussing the last events that shocked the hidden village in the leaves. The Sand and Orochimaru managed to infiltrate the Chunin exams and he was after something or rather someone. Mitarashi Anko, the woman with purple hair and a green trench coat, was busy massaging the right side of her neck where the same cursed seal of heaven was visible. After dealing with Sasuke and Naruto, Orochimaru engaged in a fight with her. However, because of his influence over her cursed seal, she couldn't focus her chakra properly. As a result, she was defenseless against the man, who instead of killing her let her live so that she could give a message to the Hokage. In case he decided to stop the Chunin exams, Orochimaru would bring his ire over the village and kill everyone. The second person, the Sandaime Hokage looked at Anko with concern as he smoked his pipe. How are you feeling? Does the cursed seal still hurt? The woman nodded, despite the pain. No, it's gotten better thanks to you Hokage-sama. So, you're telling me about Orochimaru and what he desired upon infiltrating the Chunin exams, the Hokage said, before Anko snarled at the memory. It was already nighttime and she had her back against a tree as her cursed seal was hurting her. Orochimaru just smirked as he approached Anko's position. He kneeled in front of her and waited for her angered eyes to look at him. Above all things, he enjoyed seeing such fiery resolve coming from his first apprentice. It still eluded the man how much hatred she had for him and why the cursed seal wasn't capitalizing upon it. Still, it was all the better, he supposed. He shocked her upon caressing her cheek in an affectionate way, as if all the past could be erased. There's a boy I want, or rather 2. One carries the abilities of an Uchiha, and the other possesses an infinite amount of chakra, which is not human. The first one is no doubt Uchiha Sasuke. It's my fair belief that the second child he desires is Uzumaki Naruto. The news shocked the Sandaime. He knew that Orochimaru fantasized about the Sharingan even before he escaped from the village. However, an attempt on Naruto, rather the Kyubi inside of him was absurd. The Sandaime Hokage was about to speak when a radio-like voice started speaking to Anko. It was a Chunin and from what he said, the Chunin exams were over with 21 Genins passing. With the numbers, a preliminary match would have to occur in order to reduce the participants. According to the Chunin, the last time there was a need for preliminaries was 5 years ago. Anyway, we will continue the exam afterwards, we will discuss the possible motives behind Orochimaru's desire. Anko nodded at the order and got up from her seat towards the exit. Minutes later, all of the Genins that passed the second phase were lined up inside what appeared to be a dojo inside the tower. The room was rather spacious with 2 arms at the back, holding the ram seal. It was pretty weird in Naruto's opinion, but he kept this thought inside his mind for the time being. Looking around for a bit, he noticed that besides his and Team 10, Team 8 has passed as well. He was surprised that the Itagiker team was there as well. He remembered stopping Sasuke from killing them 2 days ago and wondered how they were able to collect the 2 scrolls needed to pass the Forest of Death. For those who passed, congratulations. Anko's voice echoed throughout the clearing as she was using a microphone attached to her ear. Her eyes passed throughout the Chunin hopefuls for a second before looking at both Sasuke and Naruto for a bit longer. The idea of Orochimaru wanting the Kyubi and Naruto sent chills up her spine. She didn't have anything against the kid, but tempering with the strongest Bijuu in existence would obviously lead to terrible consequences. She wondered what the Hokage was going to do with the newly accursed genins. She noticed with a level of sympathy at Sasuke since the boy was doing the same thing she did on occasions, rubbing the back of his neck to stop the pain from the cursed seal. She snarled at her former sensei for giving his damned cursed seal to the Uchiha and wondered what his intentions were. Now, everyone shut up, Hokage-sama will speak, the old Sandaime Hokage cleared his throat. I'd like to congratulate everyone here for passing the second stage of the Chunin exams. Also, I'd like to explain the reason behind the Chunin exams. Allowing little time for the genins to digest what was to come, the Hokage continued. Due to the repercussions caused by the Shinobi Great Wars, the Chunin exams were created for each village to show its strength without resorting to wars. The Chunin exams are a simulation of war between villages. With said event, each nation can show its strength to an audience, composed of nobles and possible clients all over the elemental nations, without fear of the repercussions of war, promoting, thus, good relations between the villages. The third part of the exam will be composed with one-on-one fights. The explanation wasn't an easy feat and as usual, the genins had doubts as to the necessity of said way of thinking. Of course, it's related to the ninja's profession and history between nations. I'm sorry Hokage-sama, but what do you mean good relations between the villages? It was Tenten who asked. By placing genins from different villages against one another in a tournament, the audience, filled with possible clients, can choose which nation to hire for a mission. As such, no nation will be favored in detriment of the other, thus promoting good relations between villages. When he saw that no one would ask any questions, he turned to explain more into the third part of the exam when a person materialized in front of him, wearing a jounin uniform and a bandana. The man had bangs below his eyes and his face indicated some kind of terrible sickness. His chronic coughing gave away his situation as he addressed the Hokage. Hokage-sama, allow me to take it from here? Asked Hade as the Hokage nodded. He, then, turned to the genins before coughing some more. Before we move to the third phase of the Chunin exams, we must diminish the number of candidates. As Hokage-sama explained, the main event, which will happen in a month's time, will have the presence of high dignitaries and nobility. Thus, if all of you were to participate, it would take too long. Therefore, right now, we'll have a preliminary match to cut at least half of the current number. Like he expected, the genins protested the situation. It was Kiba who voiced it to the jounin, though. Are you kidding me? We all just escaped from hell out there for 5 days. We are all exhausted. The shinobi world is unfair, I'm afraid. The last time the need for preliminaries arose was 5 years ago. Now, I'll offer this opportunity for those who don't want to or are incapable of fighting to leave. Please raise your hands. At first, no one raised it. They were busy looking at each other to see who would abandon the exam. Suddenly, an arm was raised and it belonged to a rather tall genin with silver hair and glasses. He was showing a smirk on his face that indicated foul play, but Hei just looked at the man's name on his chart and, then, dismissed the genin named Kabuto. Both the Hokage and Anko were suspicious at him, but let it pass. Until the second part was truly over, they couldn't do anything. Their focus, right now, was the genin's fight, or rather, Uchiha Sasuke's fight. As far as they knew, Orochimaru gave the cursed seal only to Sasuke, but the Hokage had the utmost suspicion that his ex-student branded Naruto as well. Hoping to control a Jinchuriki wasn't easy, thus Orochimaru must have placed something on the boy to exert control later on. Back to Hade, he was addressing the crowd of genins. Now, the board behind me will select the opponents. The rest will have to wait on the upper levels. Let the preliminaries begin. He let out a cough as the board became alive, going through the genins' names randomly like a slots machine. When the images appeared on the board, Sasuke showed a smirk, but stopped once he felt the pain increase because of the cursed seal. His match was against another genin from Konoha named Yoroi, to whom he admitted never seeing before in his life. Since the matches were underway, everyone went to the upper levels, with Team 7 being the last. Kakashi approached his team with his hands on his pocket. His face expression indicated plain boredom, but inside he was worried for Sasuke and even Naruto, from what he heard from the Hokage. Although he had yet to confirm what Orochimaru did to Naruto, he knew what he did to Sasuke. As soon as he passed the Uchiha, he started a whispered conversation that he knew only Sasuke would hear. Sasuke, do not use the cursed seal. The order appeared as shocking to the Uchiha because he wasn't aware that his sensei knew about it, although it was expected. So you knew. The cursed seal is deeply attached to your chakra, thus it would be prudent to focus more on taijutsu, at least, until we can do something about it. I trust that you won't have much trouble in that department. The next sentence was spoken as he followed Sakura and Naruto upstairs. He still had to talk to Naruto, but that could wait. If Naruto had received the cursed seal, then he would be suffering the same symptoms as Sasuke, and by looking at the big smile on his face and presumably painless attitude, there was no evidence of a cursed seal. Upon seeing Kakashi, Sakura wanted so badly to just tell him about the cursed seal on Naruto and Sasuke's necks. However, she was even more conflicted now than before. One day before the preliminaries, Sasuke acknowledged the possibility of her opening her mouth and managed to convince her, through a heated discussion, that she was not to meddle into other people's business. She disagreed with him for the first time in her life. Nevertheless, her feelings for him stood in the way of telling Kakashi about it. The fight was now underway as Sasuke stood in front of Yoroi. He concurred with Kakashi that until he could explore the cursed seal in more depth, he wouldn't use it. A part of him was angry over not being able to use chakra at all for this fight. As an Uchiha, he took great pride in his fire techniques and his Sharingan eyes. Still, it would be a nice challenge for him to test his skills. Hayate coughed a bit before authorizing the fight to begin. Sasuke's opponent didn't wait and charged against the Uchiha as well, using plain taijutsu. As he approached, Sasuke realized that the man was bigger than him, thus theoretically stronger. Therefore, he decided to capitalize on a specific principle of what he learned in taijutsu. When the opponent is much stronger than you, simply use his strength against him. Yoroi came with a strong punch aimed at Sasuke's face, only for the Uchiha to drop to the ground and placed his right foot above the man's knee and the left one close to Yoroi's foot, making him fall on the ground. Sasuke soon grabbed his arm and restrained it, while at the same time threatening to break it. At first, it appeared as if he had the upper hand, before Yoroi smirked and used his free hand to grab Sasuke's shirt before his hand started glowing. Sasuke immediately felt something wrong with his chakra. He managed to release Yoroi's hold, landing a kick on Yoroi's face. He did some backflips but stopped once the pain became unbearable. Focusing on nurturing the pain somewhat, he took his attention away from his opponent, allowing Yoroi to appear in front of him. Yoroi grabbed his head this time with his glowing hand as once more, Sasuke felt his chakra acting strangely. "You're sucking my chakra." The realization forced a smirk behind Yoroi's mask as he thought it was too late for Sasuke now. "Very cunning of you to notice, but I'm afraid it's too late now." Despite Sasuke's momentary hold, with a trembling right hand, he managed to grab a kunai inside his pouch and quickly attack Yoroi, opening a deep gash on his clothes. A few inches further and surely, the man would lose a lot of blood. Sasuke capitalized on the man's wonderings and charged using taijutsu once more. He managed to land a nice sequence of kicks, with the last one being a move that he copied from Rock Lee. He sent the man flying with a high kick before he jumped as well, appearing beneath Yoroi. The force of the kick disoriented him, so while falling, Sasuke started flipping in order to land the finishing blow. He snarled in midair since he lost control over the cursed seal as it started to spread over his face, which caused the Hokage, Anko and Kakashi to get ready in case they needed to immobilize Sasuke. Sasuke, though, bit his lower lip in indignation over losing control over his body and practically forced the cursed seal away as he flipped and finished his taijutsu attack entitled Shishi Renden. They were surprised that Sasuke managed to stop the cursed seal by will alone as Hayate declared Sasuke the winner of the match. Kakashi didn't wait for him to go upstairs, though, as he grabbed Sasuke and shunshined away from the arena. On the other side of the room, a disguised Odo Jounin smirked at this. He supposed he should follow Kakashi and see what he was planning to do with Sasuke. Meanwhile, Hayate issued the second fight. "Man. I'm not going to focus much on the other fights since there isn't much need to. Everyone already knows what happened. Instead, when I return to the fights, it will be Naruto's turn." Sasuke and Kakashi. Sasuke just stood in the center of the room while he saw Kakashi planting several kunes around him in a circle. He supposed it had something to do with the cursed seal on his neck, but he waited for his sensei to finish whatever he was planning on doing. Once planting the last kunai, Kakashi looked at his student with a bored expression. He took a moment to ponder about the situation presented before him and the possible repercussions that would result from what he was about to say to Sasuke. It was a pain and in all actuality, he was against the Hokage's orders. As the last Uchiha, everything about Sasuke was considered sensitive, but the old man had faith that the will of fire burned brightly within the boy, despite its cold exterior. "Sasuke, after I'm done explaining this to you, I don't want you to respond right away. As I'm sure you're aware, the cursed seal on your neck is a very sensitive topic. Hokage-sama asked me to lay out your options. There is a sealing jutsu that is able to seal the cursed seal, which would improve your chances in controlling it. By placing the seal around the cursed seal and based on your will to block its force, we can better contain it. By the look on Kakashi's face, Sasuke could tell that he wished that the Uchiha would choose this path, despite now knowing his other options, but he listened anyway. Your other option, which was given by the Hokage, was for you to use the cursed seal at will. The shock on Sasuke's face was quite evident, and in all fairness, Kakashi was surprised as well when he heard Hiruzen's reasons for such. Despite knowing that the Anbu would constantly keep their eyes on Sasuke, Kakashi wondered if, with this, Konoha would end up handing Sasuke to Orochimaru on a silver platter. Even Orochimaru, hidden from the shadows, was surprised at this as he wondered what his old sensei was thinking. Sasuke, for his part, was surprised at the vote of confidence. No doubt the Hokage would make sure to keep tabs with him, somehow. The pain he felt was because he tried to repel the cursed seal. He needed power to kill his brother, that was for sure. He turned to his sensei with a serious face. Surely, the old man would demand something in return, he reasoned. What's the catch if I were to choose the second option? Kakashi knew Sasuke would go for the second. Okage-sama's only interested in the village's welfare, Sasuke. The vague answer was rather clarifying. Uchiha Sasuke may be lost in revenge, but he was smart enough to realize that the Sannin Orochimaru wanted something in return for giving him power. And giving anything to Konoha's most wanted criminal besides Itachi would be, in all essence, considered treason against a hidden village in the leaves. Sasuke supposed it wasn't a tough condition to uphold. Perhaps, this could work to his advantage as well, seeing the only thing that mattered to him now was killing his brother and reviving his clan. Kakashi nodded in quiet concern at Sasuke's choosing. However, it was not his decision to make, rather the Hokage's. He just hoped that this decision wouldn't bring trouble to Konoha in the future. Orochimaru, on the other hand, didn't enjoy this course of action. He should have been thrilled that Sasuke would use the cursed seal, but something in his mind wondered if perhaps that approach could convince Sasuke to remain in the village, rather than the opposite. It didn't take too much intelligence to understand what Kakashi said. Perhaps, he underestimated his sensei a bit. Once back at the dojo, Sasuke and Kakashi were surprised to see that Naruto's fight would be next. According to Sakura, Aburame Shino won his match against the Odo Genin Zaku, and Shikamaru won against the Odo Kunoichi Kin. Now, the fourth fight was Naruto against Kiba. Both Sharingan wielders nodded before a Jounin Kunoichi by the name of Kurenai approached Kakashi. The scarecrow Jounin looked at her with half his visible eye open as he wondered what she wanted to talk about. Your Genin should forfeit Kakashi, there is no way he can beat Kiba. Sasuke didn't understand why, but he actually considered telling the Jounin not to underestimate Naruto, something he never thought before. Like him, Naruto was an orphan. Like him, the blonde was alone, and also like him, Naruto received a cursed seal. These three facts alone were kindly opening Sasuke's eyes to who exactly was Uzumaki Naruto. The fact that they belonged to the same team was irrelevant to Sasuke. Kakashi, for his part, just smiled at the Jounin's comment, which kind of infuriated Kurenai. The first time Kakashi showed that smile, she wanted to cast her most powerful genjutsu. The feeling only increased with time. We'll see about that, Kurenai. Naruto has matured a lot since the academy. I bet you'll be surprised the smug look on Kurenai's face didn't change. She smiled at him and turned to see the fight. It could be considered pride on his part regarding her student, but anything coming from Kakashi's mouth had its merit. However, the blonde was the academy's dead last. Even with Sharingan no Kakashi as his sensei, he couldn't be better than Kiba. Sakura, despite everything, wanted to cheer for her teammate, and she would. Back to the fight at hand, Kiba used a period before Hate's announcement to trash-talk Naruto a bit. Boy Naruto, why don't you give up already? There's no way a dead last like you can beat me and Akamaru. The dog even let out a bark in acknowledgement of what Kiba said, much to Naruto's displeasure. He decided that using the cursed seal wouldn't be the best course of action right now, for some reason. He would use the skills he already possessed. I'll make you eat those words, dog breath. Hayate had had enough of this and authorized the fight. The two opponents looked at one another for a bit as the audience discussed between them that Kiba would win this quick. Those voices belonged to Ino and Choji. Shikamaru would agree, except that he remembered what Naruto did at the Forest of Death. That energy that surrounded him was strange. Even stranger was that he managed to deal with the Odo Genin with just one punch. He couldn't predict the outcome of this match. It was Kiba who made the first move as he molded chakra for his technique. He immediately crouched on the ground like a canine as his nails and teeth were elongated. He, then, vanished from sight, surprising Naruto. His eyes briefly saw some debris from earlier fights. When Kiba hit him on the stomach, the blonde already managed to replace his body with nearby wood. However, he was surprised at Kiba's speed. Kiba, for his part, was surprised that the blonde managed to use the Kawarimi so quickly. He shrugged it off and charged once more, this time landing a strong attack on Naruto's chest, sending him flying. It actually took some air out of Naruto, but he managed to get up and take a kunai from his pouch to aid him. Kiba charged once more, this time, with his nails, but in underestimating the blonde and attacking the same location as before, Naruto managed to parry it with his kunai. Quite shocked at the movement, Kiba created some distance from the blonde for a while. He smirked, though, when Akamaru jumped from behind Naruto and started biting the blonde's arm. With Akamaru's distraction, Kiba charged Naruto. Naruto noticed Kiba's movement and landed a strong punch on Akamaru's face before throwing him straight at Kiba. So concerned he was for his partner's well-being that he let go of the attack in order to see if Akamaru was okay. Kiba snarled at Naruto for hurting Akamaru before he gave a red pill to his partner. "It's over this time, Naruto. I was considering taking it easy on you. Juujin Bunshin no Jutsu, Beast Clone Technique." Naruto was surprised when Akamaru's fur turned red. He was even more surprised when the dog jumped at Kiba's back and transformed into another Kiba, as if one wasn't already difficult to begin with. Kiba and Akamaru smirked and charged Naruto at the same time. They began spinning madly. Suddenly, they formed two drills as they charged at Naruto with great speed. It was Kiba's strongest technique so far and he would use it against the blonde for what he did to Akamaru. Atsuuga, dual piercing fang technique. Acting quickly, Naruto managed to get out of the way from both drills, but he never took his eyes away from the drills as they made a turn and charged once more. This time, it was a close call as 1 second later, the second drill would catch him. Kiba and Akamaru attacked him relentlessly, not allowing him time to attack. Quickly grabbing a smoke bomb from inside his pouch, he threw it to the ground, enveloping him inside. The drills continued his attack, but with the smoke bomb, they couldn't see. When the smoke was cleared, the entire audience was confused when instead of Naruto, a third Kiba appeared. The three looked at each other with shocked faces. Kakashi and Sasuke smirked at Naruto's way of thinking. Taoji, Ino and Shikamaru were shocked to see that Kiba was having trouble with Naruto. Shikamaru was because he thought that the blonde would use that energy from the Forest of Death. The fact that he resorted to other means of attack against Kiba surprised him. What surprised him even more was that Naruto had a brain in order to henge into Kiba. Despite the situation, Kiba was the one that smirked as he turned to one of the lookalikes and punched him. "A nice plan, Naruto, but you can't fool my nose." Kiba's smirk turned into shock as the henge cleared, appearing a beaten Akamaru instead of Naruto. So lost he was that instead of focusing on his senses, he punched the real Akamaru. Kiba was shocked once more. The first beaten Akamaru got up and turned into a smirking Naruto. He charged at Kiba and landed a fierce punch on his face, seeing as his opponent was focused on the fact that he just punched Akamaru, thinking that it was Naruto. Kurenai was surprised at the boy's strategy, wondering if the reports of the academy were accurate. Kiba got up from the ground and anyone could see in his eyes that he was beyond mad at this point. Not only did Naruto punch Akamaru, but he also forced Kiba to do it as well. Kiba was even trembling from rage, while Naruto resumed his smile of triumph. He guessed it was time to use that technique. Boy Kiba, 2 against 1 was unfair, dog breath. Kiba had to bite his hand a bit to control his rage at the blonde. "If you like numbers so much, then I have a surprise for you. Tajuu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Multi-shadow clone technique." As soon as the words escaped his mouth, the audience opened their mouths, mostly not believing the number of clones that appeared surrounding the also shocked Kiba. As he looked around, all he could see was blonde hair and orange jackets. Only those upstairs had a fair advantage in knowing how many clones were down there. The only ones who knew about the boy's knowledge of Kage Bunshin technique and extensive chakra capacity were the Hokage, Kakashi and Yumino Ruka, who happened to be watching the fight with a smile on his face at seeing Naruto's growth. Kurenai wondered how the hell Naruto could create so many clones while looking at Kakashi from the corner of her eye. The scarecrow Jounin appeared aloof to things around him, but inside he was smirking at Kurenai for belonging to the list formed by ninjas who underestimated Uzumaki Naruto. The woman, for her part, felt a bit of shame as she underestimated Kiba's opponent just like Kiba did, and now there was no way he could win. When the clones attacked, Kiba managed to take down a couple dozen driven by pure anger. However, he couldn't deal with the rest as he was pounded mercilessly, just like Mizuki was a few months back. A couple minutes of beating later, the clones vanished as the proctor approached the unconscious and beaten Kiba on the floor. He used his fingers to feel for a pulse and was surprised to feel one from the beating he witnessed. Naruto seemed uneasy by seeing the surprised look on the proctor's face. If he wouldn't kill Mizuki, certainly he wouldn't kill a classmate. Orochimaru, back with his disguise, could only drool in anticipation upon seeing how much chakra Naruto possessed. To think that the blonde used neither the cursed seal nor the fox's chakra and managed to produce this number of Kage Bunshins. Soon, with Sasuke's Sharingan and Naruto's insane chakra capacity, no ninjutsu would be out of his grasp, that's for sure. As the blonde returned to the upper levels, he kept his goofy smile, showing how happy he was for winning his match and passing the preliminaries. He saw that his team was looking at him and, strangely enough, they were smiling at him, even Sasuke for some reason he didn't understand. The rest of the fights progressed with each genin showing their best in order to qualify for the third and last phase of the exam. Chaoji lost his battle against a sound ninja Dosu. Sakura was pitted against Ino, a match that resulted in a tie. Enkuro managed to win his fight against an older Konoha genin, sing his puppet trick, and the sand Kunoichi Tamari bested Tenten through her expertise in wind jutsu. The last two matches, though, showed the genins two things. First of them was never to mess with Sabaku no Gaara. In his match against Rock Lee, he used his sand and crushed Lee's right arm and right leg completely. The fight began with Lee dominating Gaara in speed. However, when Gaara managed to trap Lee, the match was over. With the wounds, there was no guarantee that Lee would be able to resume his life as a ninja. It wasn't a simple case of broken limbs. They were, in a word, smashed by the crushing sand. The other thing the genins learned was the deep hatred between the two branches of the Hyuga clan. The genius of the branch family Hyuga Niji was pitted against Hyuga Hinata, daughter of the clan head Hyuga Hiashi. The fight was really dramatic as everyone knew Hinata's kind soul. Despite that, Niji had no remorse and launched killing Gyuukin blows at her non-stop. In the middle of the beating, Hinata reacted due to being cheered on by an enraged Naruto. However, that only increased the beating she received. In the end, Hinata was almost killed by her cousin. If Heiei chose to call the match a minute later she would have been. Naruto attended her right after the fight was over and even threatened Niji to beat him up on the next part of the exam, much to Kurenai's surprise upon seeing the blonde defending her student so much. Eventually, the preliminaries ended before the Hokage congratulated those who passed and inspiring those who didn't so that they could try again next time. Next, for those who passed it was time to choose who their opponents would be. They formed a line in front of Anko and each took out a number from a wooden box in order to form the pair. This took less than a minute as all those who passed were asked to say their numbers out loud. After that, both Anko and Marino Ibiki wrote the names on a different board that indicated a tournament chart going from the first fight to the champion of the tournament all the way to the top. The matches were settled as following. Match number 1 Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Niji. Match number 2 Uchiha Sasuke vs Gaara. Match number 3 Sabaku no Kankuro x Aburame Shino. Match number 4 Nara Shikamaru x Kanuta Dosu. Match number 5 Sabaku Tamari x winner of match number 4. The third and last phase of the exam will occur in 1 month time from now. The Hokage said, surprising those who passed. There are 2 reasons behind it. Seeing as you'll be performing for an audience, we will need the time to prepare the necessary summons for the dignitaries that will attend the tournament. Also, these previous matches occurred on the premise that each of you was fighting a stranger, which is no longer the case. You'll need time to train in order to incorporate new skills or perhaps improve your already existing ones. So, in order to make the finals fair and just, we're giving you this month to prepare. The group of genins nodded as each looked towards their respective opponents with mixed feelings. Niji smirked seeing as his first opponent would be an easy one. Naruto, for his part, glared daggers at Niji from what he did to Hinata. Sasuke locked eyes with Gaara for a while as both were quite eager for this match. With the preliminaries over, the genins were escorted out of the forest and to their respective place of rests. In 1 month's time, they would meet again at the Chunin exam stadium. Next day. The Hokage was inside his office while smoking his pipe. In front of his was the list of high dignitaries that he would invite to the last part of the Chunin exams. However, this task wasn't necessarily a concern at the moment. In front of him were Jounin Kakashi and Takebetsu Jounin Anko. The Hokage called both of them here to discuss what happened at the Forest of Death between Orochimaru and 2 of Kakashi's genins. It was needless to say that both Sasuke and Naruto needed to be prepared for the exams, as surely, Orochimaru would make his move then. However, the whole purpose of the 1-month period was for the genins to better prepare themselves and improve. That being said, Hada Kakashi couldn't train both of them together. Sasuke's first opponent will be the Kazukiyage's son Gaara. I'll be training him to further improve his Sharingan and get him adapt on the cursed seal, as per your instructions Hokage-sama. If he shows me he's ready, I will consider teaching him the Chidori. Such level of confidence in his student, the Hokage mused, just like he had with Orochimaru back when he was just a genin. Regardless, the Chidori was an assassination technique. And to teach a genin an A-rank technique of said caliber was unheard of. Still, he trusted Kakashi to do the right thing, as far as Sasuke was concerned. What do you intend to do regarding Naruto? Like Sasuke, he'll face a tough opponent and you won't be able to train him. Anko remained quiet throughout the conversation and she wondered why the Hokage called her if he intended to talk about Naruto and Sasuke's training. Ibisu already agreed to tutor Naruto for the month. Naruto's insane chakra capacity makes it hard to be controlled. With an elite tutor such as Ibisu, I'm sure Naruto's chakra control will improve. Besides that, I don't believe we have much margin for improvement in 1 month time, at least as far as a genin should know anyway. Elemental training would be a good start, but 1 month isn't enough time for that. The Hokage couldn't help but agree that it took time to develop a shinobi's elemental affinity. But what he didn't agree was Kakashi's choice as replacement for Naruto's teacher. While I agree with you regarding the element, I believe that Ibisu, despite being an elite tutor, won't achieve results with someone like Naruto. From what Iruka told me, Naruto is more of a trial and error kind of learner. Focusing on theoretical explanations regarding chakra control won't achieve great results. And like you said, by the time he understands what Ibisu is trying to teach him, the month period will be over. I do not doubt your skills as a teacher, Kakashi, but I believe there's a more suitable teacher to improve his skills, and I even dare say that this person could help him develop his affinity faster. The smile on the Hokage's face told the silent Anko that she wouldn't like what was about to happen. The scarecrow Jounin wasn't bothered by the Hokage's explanation and shrugged his shoulders a bit. Who do you suggest then, Hokage-sama? He had a feeling he already knew the answer, but asked anyway. The Hokage smiled before turning to the already enraged Anko. Think you can take care of him, Anko? He knew the woman would explode in about 2 seconds, but it never ceased to amuse this old man. What? Now I'm supposed to babysit some brat. Screw it, I'll deal with him just fine. When you meet him, Kakashi, tell him to meet me at the dango stand at noon. She marched towards the handle, but paused once she reached the handle and opened. Oh, and be sure to warn him that he'll be my little toy for the duration of the month. I won't be held responsible if he appears at the hospital all bruised and full of holes. She slammed the door afterwards, leaving an amused Hokage and a surprised Kakashi, who then turned to see the smile on his leader's face. Was that wise, Hokage-sama? That threat seemed genuine. A great laughter came from the Hokage's mouth, and Kakashi wondered if perhaps old age had lost his sanity. Naruto will be fine, I'm sure of it. If anyone can help him improve his skills, that person would be her. Naruto works better with action instead of books anyway, and Anko used to train junior Anbu shinobi. Kakashi knew the old man had another reason for such as the old man suddenly became serious about the ordeal. She is also our best bet in finding out what Orochimaru did to Naruto at the Forest of Death, Kakashi. If anything tampered with Minato's seal, then I must contact Jiraiya immediately. Kakashi nodded in understanding. Well, then I'm off to find Sasuke and Naruto to tell him the news. He, then, vanished using a shunshin. But Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke was about to leave the compound of his family when he saw Kakashi standing at the exit while reading that book of his. Upon seeing the genin, Kakashi closed the book and approached Sasuke with his hands on pockets. Sasuke, pack your bags, we're leaving to begin your training for the exams. I already got clearance from the Hokage. Sasuke just nodded and returned to his house to pack as per instructions. But Naruto. The cage bunshin of Kakashi appeared in front of Naruto's apartment just as he opened the door. Boy Kakashi-sensei, I was about to go look for you. Now, we can begin my training. Naruto, I will be training Sasuke for the exams. The sudden information shocked Naruto, and he damn well protested. What? Okay, so what, you're abandoning me and train Sasuke, what's the deal here? Naruto made his best face of anger, but clone Kakashi just maintained his normal expression. Sasuke's opponent is Gar Naruto. He'll need all the training he can to face against him. And no, I didn't abandon you, although it hurts that you think so little of your sensei. A good friend of mine agreed to train you for the entire month. You are to meet her at the dango stand in 1 hour. Naruto continued to stare at the Jounin with his face of anger. Train hard, Naruto. With the right motivation, you can overcome any obstacle set before you. I'm quite eager to see the results of your training in 1 month time. Until then, take care. Kakashi clone was dispelled soon afterward, which infuriated the blonde even more. However, the blonde wouldn't be deterred by this. He needed to get stronger. Becoming a Chunin meant one more step towards his Hokage dream. Plus, he needed to teach Neji a lesson for what he did to Hinata. 1 hour later. Once he arrived in front of the dango stand, he got inside and looked around in order to find the one who would be training him for the entire month. He was surprised, though, that only one person was there. Naruto was wondering where he met the kunoichi in front of him. There wasn't many kunoichis wearing trench coats, had purple hair and wore Anbu shin guards on her legs. When Anko turned and smiled at her charge, Naruto's face went blank in fear as he now remembered where he saw her for the first time. You are late, brat, I will be taking care of you. Ah, it's the crazy lady from the Chunin exams. Run for your lives, the blonde screamed to heavens as he ran far away from Anko. A vein popped on her forehead as she took all the empty dango sticks and even a few senbons from her pouch and chased the screaming Naruto. The brat's voice was annoying as it is, without him calling her crazy lady. Oh, he would pay dearly for that. It was a wild chase throughout the village as Naruto was busy dodging senbons that were being thrown by an infuriated Anko. Naruto quickly passed by Sasuke and Kakashi, never once stopping to grate the more cursed Kakashi for doing this to him. When Anko passed with a great load of senbons between her fingers, Kakashi just smiled at his student while Sasuke looked at his sensei. He was trying very hard not to laugh at the scene, though. Eventually, Naruto entered a training ground which was, in fact, a forest covered with trees and a nice river. He used tree walking to climb a tree before the woman stopped chasing him. "Brat, get down from there, I won't throw senbons at you anymore. I just want to talk to you." The frown on his face told her that he didn't trust her enough to do that. However, when she just walked away from him towards the lake, he figured that she was telling the truth. So, he followed her until the river margin as Anko stepped on top of the river and walked like she was doing before. Looking back, she saw that he wasn't following her. She smiled, knowing that like Kakashi said, the blonde needed chakra control exercises. "Okay brat, let's get one thing straight. I don't like babysitting little brats, so if it's training what you desire, then training is what you'll get. I'm not used to training little genins, so I'll give you the same hard time I give to junior Anbu personnel. The very second I hear any complaint out of you, I'll leave and you're on your own. You understand?" Naruto nodded, though something inside his mind told him very seriously to reconsider. "Good. Now, according to your sensei Kakashi, your chakra control is total crap, so we'll work on that. Also, from what you've displayed minutes ago, you have good reflexes, but I'll hone them even more, so be prepared for sneak attacks. We'll only have 1 month, which hardly is enough time to improve your taijutsu, which by the way, still needs work. You'll be my punching bag for a while, until you learn how to fight at an adequate level. Our fights will be unrestricted, meaning that I can use anything against you, as you can on me. When I'm through with you, if you're not dead by then, you'll be considered chunin material in my book. Now, as far as ninjutsu and jinjutsu, we'll focus more on the former. With chakra capacity as big as yours and with control as crappy as yours, no jinjutsu technique would ever work. Now, the Hokage was against you focusing so much on your element, but we'll give it a try. Remember, for 1 month's time, you'll be mine to play with and you won't get to rest until maybe 2 days before the exam and only if I feel like it." This general type attitude was actually exciting Naruto instead of frightening him. If half of what she intended to teach him got through, then he no doubt would win this tournament. Anko could see in his eyes that the boy wasn't scared and it only served to ignite something inside of her as she reached for a piece of white paper inside her pouch. "If he enjoys being tortured so much, he'll fall in love with me," she reasoned. Seriously, even Junior Anbu would be trembling right now. Maybe, training this brat wouldn't be such a bad thing after all. But first, she needed to learn his element. This rule that elemental chakra is a chunin level skill was bullshit and she intended to at least teach him a technique or two of his element. "Now before I begin to explain you about the elements, I'd like to see which one you're most suited with. So focus some chakra through this sheet of paper right here. It's made from a special tree here in Konoha." As Naruto took the piece of paper with his right hand, he looked at it for a while before looking at the woman in front of him. He nodded and closed his eyes for a second. When he opened, he was surprised to see that the paper was sliced in multiple pieces. Upon looking at Anko's sudden shocked face, Naruto wondered if he did the exercise wrong. Actually, what shocked Anko wasn't the fact that she had to teach him the wind element. Sure, it was considered the toughest element to master because of its volatility. What shocked her was that normally the paper would just sliced only once. She remembered when a friend of her Asuma was tested. Naruto's paper, instead, was sliced multiple times, perhaps indicating a very strong affinity for this element, which was quite unheard of. Naruto was still lost, though. "Ah, what does this mean?" She awakened from her shock and explained. "It means that you, perhaps, have the strongest affinity for wind in Konohagakure. There are 5 main elements and by channeling chakra through the paper, it could either catch on fire indicating a fire affinity, turn to dust indicating an earth affinity, get moist indicating a water affinity, crumble indicating a lightning affinity or in your case, sliced in half, indicating a wind affinity. Yours, though, show perhaps a stronger affinity because normal wind affinities would just slice this paper in half. For now, we'll focus on improving your chakra control, reflexes and taijutsu. When you get tired from it, you'll start the exercises meant for wind manipulation." "Seriously brat, what I'm about to say won't mean I'm praising you or anything, but you have potential that far exceeds your expectations. It will be up to you to make them into reality. Now, as far as schedule is concerned, you won't have much time to sleep. I was serious about what I said before. We'll be training from sunrise to sunset and even during nights. Whatever it takes, Anko-sensei," Naruto said, earning a devilish smirk from Anko. "Welcome to hell, then, Uzumaki Naruto." 1 week had passed since the beginning of Naruto's chakra and like Anko warned, it was the living embodiment of hell. At first, Anko was against the idea of camping right at the training ground. However, that changed once the woman felt that she didn't want to cross the village every time she had to meet her favorite torture subject. So, they made camp right next to the forest of death. However, who's to say that Anko would even let the boy get his rest? One time, after not even 2 hours of sleep, Anko rudely wakened him with cold water and a lot of noise. Since that time, Naruto only fell asleep once he was sure that his teacher slept before him. The rude awakenings didn't stop though, but at least he managed to get more hours of sleep because of it. Besides that and the obvious lack of ramen, which for Naruto was worse than the lack of sleep, his training was progressing rather nicely, and he was excited because of it. Naruto mused that he trained almost 20 hours every day and had approximately 4 hours in between to eat and sleep. Anko devised a peculiar method of training that aimed, most of all, 3 things at the same time. Taijutsu, chakra control and agility. It consisted basically of Anko beating the crap out of him for a good 3 hours every morning. She would use everything at her disposal, except obviously powerful ninjutsu, which would harm him more than she ever intended to. His taijutsu improved because of it, because after quite a lot of beatings, he ended up learning how to counterattack. Of course, it was impossible for him to hit a jounin like Anko, but she figured that against a genin or even a low-level chunin, the boy was adequate enough. Lastly, his chakra control improved because on occasions, Anko would take the fight to the trees and the on top of the water, forcing Naruto to use his control while dodging senbons and shurikens. It was precisely this way how he even learned how to do water walking. If he didn't learn, then Anko would use him as target practice for the rest of the day. That being said, unless Naruto wanted his body full of holes, he forced his control to improve by going up and down the trees multiple times until he had adequate control to attempt water walking. When the afternoon began, the two went actually Naruto did and Anko just waited hunting for food. Anko even had the audacity of sending him inside the forest of death just so that he could grab a nice juicy steak for her. She expected for Naruto to encounter some dangerous creatures like a gigantic tarantula or a snake. The woman was surprised when Naruto appeared unscathed, as well as 20 clones, carrying a 500-pound wild pig for her. The poor animal had kunai holes all over his body. After lunch, it was time for ninjutsu. Anko believed that before Naruto even attempted the higher level jutsus and even wind manipulation, he needed to master the genin level techniques. Naruto actually protested against it, but he was quickly convinced once the jounin took some kunais from her holster and smiled deviously at him. Throughout the entire field, they've gathered a lot of wood and rocks for Naruto to use them as replacements without even blinking. At first, he was rather slow, but with time, Naruto managed to increase the pace, probably from fear of being Anko's target practice. The Kawarimi may be considered an E-rank ninjutsu, but it was perhaps the best jutsu used when physically evading something is impossible. Eventually, Naruto saw merit in learning it. The Bunshin jutsu was almost impossible, so Anko didn't even bother with it. Naruto had way too much chakra for that to work. It didn't matter because he had the Kage Bunshin to use. Said training took 4 to 5 hours before Anko moved on to wind manipulation. Since it took a great deal of concentration, she just let him alone for that time. She got Naruto a scroll on basic wind manipulation and even a couple jutsus for him to use if he even manages the first step down. It consisted of slicing a leaf in half using the boy's chakra. 1 week into it and nothing much happened in that regard. Other than a small dent from the left side, nothing happened and an entire week had passed. Anko knew, though, that the genin would persevere. As the training progressed, much to Anko's surprise, Naruto rarely complained, if ever at all, when some Anbu would already quit and return to their boring chunin or even jounin days. Of course, she wouldn't tell him that because it would be complacent on her part. After the first week was done, she was proud to say that the Naruto's training was going well. His chakra control was much better than before. His taijutsu improved severely compared to that style he used before. One thing that Kakashi's training, or lack thereof, never seemed to bother changing. Now, she smiled and could honestly attest some difficulty at hitting the brat. His form improved as well as his agility. It was actually very impressive before for a genin, but now it can be considered chunin level. Out of 100 senbons she threw at him in 2 hours, she missed the impressive amount of 90 senbons. What was more impressive was that he used his kunai to deflect the other 10. But none of this was enough to beat Niji, and not once did she miss the opportunity to tell him that. Still, the brat was relentless with his training. When the second week came, Anko increased the pace of his training as she constantly beat him more thoroughly and used her shurikens more accurately than before. Still, Naruto didn't complain, so she pushed forward. The brat would always demand more and, very rarely, he succumbed to unconsciousness. During one of their fights, Naruto managed to use the Kawarimi so effectively that he managed to sneak behind his teacher and sent a horde of shuriken at her. Anko was so surprised that she nearly received all of them. It was so fast and so unpredictable in her mind. With a quick use of a kunai, she deflected them all. When she saw the smirk on his face, Anko felt compelled to smile as well. The rate in which his skills were advancing was ridiculous. And to tell the truth, she wanted to see his limit. She wanted to see how much he could grow under her care. She wanted to see him kicking everyone's ass at the exams. That's why, when the second week ended, she made a single cage bunshin and sent back to the village for a small gift. Anko attested Naruto as close-ranged fighter, so why not give him something in that regard? The clone came back with a scroll and gave it to the real one, while she saw Naruto focusing on the leaf slicing exercise. She could see that the leaf was almost 100% sliced, so Naruto was good as done for the exams in terms of wind manipulation. "Naruto, that's enough for today, come here." The order came out as strange to the blonde, based on his experience so far, so he looked at her, waiting for a trap of some kind. Anko actually smirked at his response. At least, he was beginning to use his head more as well. "What is it, Anko-sensei? The moon isn't up yet. Why are you telling me to stop?" The blonde approached his sensei and took a seat in front of her. She looked at her student for a while. His body was hurting all over, his clothes were ragged and burned. For all intents and purposes, Naruto was a mess and wouldn't be able to do half the things he had done so far. Anko took the small fact that Naruto healed fast and used it to harden his muscles and reflexes. Through that much pain, he could now have a better understanding in a fight and dodge evade instead of only blocking, like he did at the beginning. As I said it before, you're a close-ranged fighter and Niji is one as well. So, I've decided to give you an advantage, here you go. Naruto took the scroll from Anko's hand and unsealed its content before a Kadashi appeared on his right hand. Its design was simple and black in color, but Naruto couldn't take his eyes off it. He noticed that the hilt was barely big enough for him to use both hands, and he looked at Anko for an explanation. She didn't say anything and ushered him to release the sword from the scabbard and hold it in a reverse grip sort of way. It would be the style of Kenjutsu that he would learn for the duration of 1 week. Naruto noticed that the hilt was smaller so that the metal could be longer in compensation. You are to treat this sword as if it were your own limbs, Naruto. Also, it will serve to hone your skills in wind manipulation. This sword is made with chakra conductive metal. Try focusing chakra through it and you'll see what I mean. Doing as he was told, Naruto focused chakra throughout the sword and saw how the blue energy circling around the metal. Naruto saw that Anko came closer and dropped a baseball-sized rock towards the chakra-enhanced sword. When the rock reached the sword's position, Naruto was surprised that the sword sliced the rock clean in 2 pieces. The 2 pieces of the stone were now on the ground as he looked at Anko with a confident smile on his face. He knew that every time he smiled like that, Anko would make sure to wipe it off his face, but this time he would risk it gladly. After all, it was the first time anyone has given him a gift besides the Sandaime Hokage. You know what happens to you when you smile like that, right Brad? Anko was already cracking her knuckles, but Naruto never lost the smile off his face. I know, but I'm too happy right now to care what will happen to me. This is perhaps the best gift someone gave me. I wanted to express how happy I am right now. Anko smiled at the brat and stood down from her threat. Normally, it wouldn't bode well for an instructor to get complacent with his or her student. But just this once, she would give him some time off. Okay brat, you've earned some time off. But starting tomorrow, you'll work double of what you're doing right now, you got it? Yes, Anko-sensei. Naruto promptly saluted his sensei. Even if Anko had told him to lay low for the day, Naruto was too ecstatic with his new gift and decided to use it as much as possible. It was entirely Anko's fault since she slipped the information that using a weapon to focus wind chakra on ended up decreasing the time needed to achieve proficiency in wind manipulation. The sensei didn't try to persuade him against it because of the same reason. If Naruto managed to finish the leaf slicing exercise quicker, they could move on to the jutsus that she intended him to learn within the weeks of training for the exams. Kenjutsu lessons wouldn't start for a while, as first Naruto needed to get accustomed to the blade into his hand. Anko would afterwards show him the moves and then they would begin the slow-motion spars. It took approximately 3 hours for Naruto to let go of the sword for the day before he approached his sensei and took a seat. The smile of satisfaction was still on him. I wouldn't know the sword alone would make you this happy. The question awoke Naruto from his inner musings. It's not that I mean the sword is the greatest. But it's something else. When Anko ushered him to explain, he continued. I've been a genin for quite some time now, but I've never realized how much further I could go before I started training with you, Anko-sensei. Kakashi-sensei is nice and all, but in all honesty, he didn't focus much on me other than teaching the tree walking exercise and some sparse lessons in Taijutsu. What I mean to say is that I've learned more from you in 2 weeks than in 4 months from Kakashi-sensei. I just wanted to say thank you, not only for the sword, but for the training as well. Anko suddenly smirked at the blonde. If getting beat up every time is what you're thankful for, you're welcome, brat. Both smiled at the interaction while eating some ration bars for dinner. Anko-sensei, do you think I could learn some wind jutsus now that I finished the leaf exercise? The sensei snorted at the comment. As far as I'm concerned, you're still due to finish. Anko stopped once she saw Naruto gathering a leaf from the ground and slicing it clean out of a sudden. The sword. Haha yeah. I just visualized a sword infused with my chakra and applied it to the leaf. Not bad, huh? Anko smiled and then gave Naruto a scroll containing 2 wind jutsus for him to learn, starting tomorrow. They were considered C-ranked and mostly supplementary techniques, but it would add nicely to Naruto's way of fighting. Both the Repashu, Gale Wind Palm technique, and the Datapa, Great Breakthrough, would increase his odds in a fight. Taking Naruto's fast use of the Kawarimi in conjunction to these 2 techniques, the brat finally had a way to beat Neji, though the Byakugan couldn't be fooled in terms of attacking from behind. The genin was finally collecting the fruits from his hard work, but Anko would rather kill herself than to become lenient on the kid. Kami knows he's this way because of her brutal methods. Okay brat, get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll increase the pace of your training. We'll have 1 more week to train and the next one, we'll take our time and study your opponents. Is it really necessary? I could train some more. Hokage-sama warned her about the brat's preference and on some level, she would accept Naruto's logic. But a chunin needed more than just skills. We already covered enough ground and will cover even more this next week. Information on the battlefield is what actually wins battles, Naruto. Chunins are leaders, hence why before acting, they must gather as much information as possible on the enemy. Quite certainly, the judges will take your strategy into account as much as they'll take your skills. Can you tell me why a strong shinobi, whose only strategy is to beat an enemy using brute force, could never become a chunin? Naruto thought for a while, while taking what Anko had said into account. It's because he lacks strategy. Although innocent, Naruto answered right. That's precisely why. One advantage your opponents have is that they have had a better education, since they belong to shinobi clans with great resources. Nara, Hyuga, Uchiha, Obirama, all of them will come to the tournament prepared, both physically and mentally, and so should you. Seriously, brat, I won't have my student lose to an enemy, say Neji, because he forgot about the Hyuga's Byakugan, or to Shikamaru, if you forget about his clan's special abilities to control shadows. All of this knowledge will have to be taken into account at the tournament. Now, we'll focus on that part closer to the end of the month. And you're right about getting some extra training, so we'll take only the 3 last days for the information department, okay? Now get some sleep, will you? Naruto saluted the woman once more and closed his eyes right there by the fire. Anko smirked at the brat and was about to do the same when she sensed someone approaching from behind. Taking a kunai, she almost threw the projectile at the man before the silver hair and the blue mask threw her off. The sudden appearance of Kakashi surprised Anko as she thought that the man was training Sasuke far away from here. The fact that he walked in with one hand inside his pocket and one busy holding an orange book gave Anko the indication that the Kakashi in front of her was the real Scarecrow Jounin. For all intents and purposes, it could very well be Orochimaru or someone under his command trying to use Naruto once more. She also knew that Kakashi wouldn't risk leaving Sasuke by himself, so the one in front of her must be a Kage Bunshin. Are you a clone or the original? The man just smiled at her before looking at the sleeping form of his student. Anko saw it and answered his silent question. He's doing great if you must know, however something's been bugging me since the training started. It's actually good that you're here because I couldn't just leave this place and warn Hokage-sama. Please come here and take a look at Naruto's exposed neck and tell me what you see. The clone did as requested before his eye widened to impossible proportions. Although it was different from Sasuke and even Anko's seal design, he knew it to be one of Orochimaru's creations indeed. So Naruto was also branded with the cursed seal. However, where Sasuke was terribly affected by it, Naruto didn't seem to be. Did he manifest its power during training? Anko negated that statement with a simple shake of the head. Not one so far, even though I pushed a brat more than I've pushed Junior Anbu. If anger was the catalyst, then this brat is a saint. Also, I'm quite curious as to the red color instead of the usual black one I carry. Kakashi took another look at the seal and got curious as well. Sasuke's was black as well. I wonder why he hasn't said anything either to me, you or the Hokage. Perhaps, he is hiding it, but for what reason? Kakashi voiced his thoughts for a while before turning to Anko. Will you confront him about it? I actually don't know what to do in that regard or if I need to do anything at all. If he hasn't used so far is because he doesn't like to rely on it. I was hoping you could ask Hokage-sama for me. The Kakashi clone nodded before focusing on other aspects. He focused on Naruto's ragged clothes and the number of bruises on his skin. He figured that Anko would push him hard, but perhaps she was going overboard. Nevertheless, he supposed that Anko knew what she was doing, hence he chose not to comment about the brat's training. It was best that Kakashi didn't know as well, since he was training Sasuke, one of Naruto's opponents at the exams. He would consult the Hokage about it. Hopefully, he would shed some light about what to do concerning Naruto. I'll talk to him about it. I'm pretty sure he'll ask Jiraiya to take a look on the other seal to see what happened to Naruto. If that occurs, expect his visit sometime during next week. The clone smiled at Anko before dispelling in order to send information to the original Kakashi. Mountainous region of Fire Country. Immediately after the clone was dispelled, the real Kakashi flinched at the received information. Branding Sasuke with the cursed seal was pretty low for Orochimaru, but branding Naruto was even worse. Orochimaru must have figured that whatever happened as a consequence would be to his advantage. If the Kyubi was released as a result of the cursed seal, then Konoha would be destroyed, hence his plan was accomplished. If not, then he managed to place a part of him inside of Naruto and is working from the inside in order to gain himself more chakra than any thought possible. Indeed, Orochimaru was dangerous, but tempering with something as powerful as the Kyubi was beyond nuts in his opinion. Summoning another Kage Bunshin, he sent the clone towards the Hokage's office as he knew the man would be working at this late hour. Kakashi just wondered what the leader would do concerning Naruto. His Jinchuriki status was sensitive enough and now he was also branded with the cursed seal. It became a more troublesome situation than he ever thought it would be. At the Hokage's office. The Hokage was busy going through some reports when a knock was heard at the door. He was surprised to see Kakashi entering before he smiled. Kakashi wouldn't risk leaving Sasuke alone because of Orochimaru. I assume you have urgent news to discuss since you've sent a clone here in such a late hour. Anko has confided me with some rather interesting news about Naruto. From what I could see, Orochimaru branded him with the cursed seal as well. The Hokage was reading a report while listening to the Jounin, but Kakashi could very well see that his attention wasn't on the report anymore. Why would it, actually? It's not every day you find out that your own student isn't only experimenting on humans, but with demons as well, especially one who could level an entire village with just a swing of its tails. Is it the same as Sasuke's? Why didn't it manifest yet like Sasuke's? It's not the same, although I'm only speaking about its design. I don't have the skills to tell the difference. Grabbing a blank piece of paper from the desk, Kakashi showed the Hokage Naruto seal. It's red, though instead of black. I don't know much about it either, let's hope that Jiraiya is in the neighborhood to take a look at it before the finals. Please tell Anko to avoid doing anything that could tamper with both seals. I will contact that pervert. At training ground number 43. Okay, I'll do as he said. Thanks Kakashi, the clone nodded before vanishing once more. Upon looking at Naruto's seal once more, Anko unconsciously rubbed hers as well. She hated her old sensei so much, so she took it upon herself to deal with the man. However, now not only Anko, but Naruto and Sasuke shared the same fate. Naruto was perhaps the most sensitive case because he housed the Kyubi inside of him. If anything damaged the Yondame's seal, the beast would get out and destroy everything in its path. All because that bastard wanted power. Right now, it was useless to dwell on such thoughts. It was best to train Naruto to the best of her abilities so that when the time came, he could deal with Konoha's enemies. Next day. The sun barely appeared and two ninjas were already going at each other with vigor. Naruto knew that Anko would step up his training, but he was able to sense a sudden increase in Anko's temper that he never saw before. It appeared as if the woman really wanted to harm him rather than train him. Nevertheless, he figured that by evading this new Anko and even landing a few hits would certify him against tougher opponents at the exams like Neji. If he could cover his own ass against a Jounin, then dealing with Neji would be a piece of cake. Naruto blocked an incoming kick that would aim his head before performing a quick Kawarimi to appear behind her, however Anko already knew this move and quite surprisingly unleashed a great load of snakes at the boy. Upon seeing the snakes coming from inside her sleeves, Naruto was surprised as hell. However, he managed to use another replacement technique and appeared to her side with a kunai on his hand. Anko just turned and performed some hand seals before gathering air inside her lungs. She exhaled a gigantic fireball at him. Naruto quickly sent a Kage Bunshin in front of him as he dodged the fireball's path. The blonde was right next to Anko with the intention of kicking her, but Anko smirked at his attempt and grabbed a couple of shurikens. The genin knew that Anko wouldn't hesitate with those shurikens, hence why he jumped backwards and sticked himself to the behind him before throwing some kunes at his sensei. The woman deflected Naruto's projectiles with her shurikens but did nothing afterward, which confused Naruto greatly. It was sheer reflex that Naruto jumped roughly to the side and avoided another projectile assault. As he looked at the one who attacked him from behind, he noticed that it was his sensei. The one to whom he was fighting had transformed into mud. Deciding to use his favorite jutsu, Naruto summoned 4 cage bunshin and sent them towards Anko. Anko expected the clones to attack her without any sort of coordination, however she quickly saw that they were reflection of the original. So, it took her some time to deal with them, however it worked well for Naruto to vanish from sight and prepare something for her. As soon as the clones were dealt with, Naruto quickly appeared behind Anko and attacked her. Anko turned in time to see him and bended her body slightly, avoiding Naruto's sneak attack. She, then, landed a fierce kick on his stomach. The genin was sent flying towards the ground before landing hard on the ground. Anko dropped right in front of him and waited for her student to get up. "Get up, brat, I told you I'd increase the pace. You can do better than that, get up." Anko decided to provoke him further by landing a kick on his stomach, however when she landed, she was surprised to see that she kicked wood instead. And it wasn't a normal piece of wood as it was covered with explosive tags. Anko snarled at the brat's sneakiness before summoning a quick Tsuchi Bunshin to escape the explosion. Naruto was smirking at his trap but frowned once he saw Anko standing behind him with a smile on her face. He got ready for any kind of attack but instead all he received were claps coming from his sensei. Naruto managed, with a few E-rank ninjutsu, overcome a jounin. She wouldn't be a good sensei if she didn't praise her students' good work. "That was really nice, Naruto. Now, hit the water. It's time for a new exercise in chakra control I've been meaning to teach you." Naruto took some time to breathe and nodded at the order. After he stopped in the middle of the lake, Naruto's eyes widened to impossible proportions once he saw a baseball-sized rock coming right his way fast. He managed to dodge it, albeit barely. This way you can practice your chakra control at the same time as you practice your agility. Now if you don't want to get hit, you'll have to dodge and I have my entire collection of rocks here to throw at you. Both Naruto and the Hokage, who was watching everything with his mystic ball, face faulted at the overkill method of training, but only the Hokage had such luxury. Anko even summoned a cage bunshin and instead of 1, 2 now threw rocks at Naruto. While seeing the brat dodging the rocks out of fear for his life, the Hokage was wondering if perhaps Anko was taking this a bit too hard on the boy. The man never heard of Anbus being trained like this. But as the training progressed, the Hokage was amazed that Naruto was managing the exercise. He flinched once he saw that one nasty rock hit Naruto's stomach, which took the air away from him for a while. Anko at least waited until he was good enough to return and continued the assault. 2 hours later, Naruto was thanking the heavens that the exercise was over. Probably, the Hokage was as well, but the genin wouldn't know. "Now, we'll be stuck with wind manipulation and Kenjutsu, Naruto. You have 15 minutes to recover your energy and eat something." The boy just nodded and took a couple of ration bars from his pocket as he had time to ponder on what happened at the fight. He didn't know why, but immediately after the bunshins were dealt with, Naruto saw the battle from an angle he had never been before. He also remembered seeing Anko punching him in the face when actually, she only kicked him. What was going on here, he asked. It shouldn't be possible for this to occur, or was he actually losing his mind due to this insane training? "Is there something on your mind, brat?" After Naruto explained, Anko took a while to stare at Naruto, as if what he said was nothing new. "You're telling me you didn't know about the fact that a cage bunshin transfers the information back to the original once dispelled?" The look of pure question mark in front of her pretty answered the question. Anko was contemplating between beating him for it or beat herself for not using this knowledge to his best interest. Granted that any information the clone gathered could be transferred to the original, the genin could boost his chakra control and wind manipulation exercises, as well as new jutsus to master, before the finals. "Naruto, how many clones can you produce without tiring yourself out?" Naruto moved to his thinking pose for a while. "Well, I'd say 100 give or take, why?" Anko was practically laughing in excitement. "Summon 100 and divide them in 3 groups. One will practice chakra control. The second will practice the leaf slicing exercise and the rest will be attempting the jutsus. The more you can summon, the faster your learning rate will be." Naruto took a while to understand and nodded before summoning 100 copies of himself. He, quickly, divided them into groups as per Anko's orders before everyone began their part of the training. Anko was marveled at the sight of so many training just for one's benefit. "What am I going to do, Anko-sensei?" The question alerted Anko and she turned to see the original. What shocked her was that instead of getting tired with all the chakra used for the cage bunshins, Naruto was perfectly fine. Seriously, how much chakra does this kid possess? He wasn't even using the cursed seal or the fox's chakra. It was all his. "Grab your sword, Naruto, it's time for you to learn the katas." So this was Naruto's routine for the entire week. From morning until noon, Naruto would fight with Anko with no restraints, not even with jutsus. In the afternoon, he would summon his clones for the chakra part and noon ninjutsu techniques while he practiced his kenjutsu katas. Anko would, on occasion, summon an Anbu training course and usher the genin to go through it a great number of times so that he could lower his time needed to go through the obstacles. And Naruto achieved some great timing on the obstacle course. Not Anbu level, though, but good enough to leave a lot of chunins behind. When the week was over, Anko decided to test the results of Naruto's training with the cage bunchins. The results were nearly palpable as his speed greatly increased as well as the speed behind his techniques. The blonde managed to learn the two Futon jutsus and even adapted them to his routine. He would use Kawurimi to get behind the enemy and throw two shurikens before using the Repushu technique to impale the enemy. Anko only managed to dodge it by using the Tsuchi Bunshin technique. One last thing that she wanted Naruto to learn was the order of elements. As soon as he unleashed the Datapa technique on Anko, she used the Grand Fireball technique back at him. The fire technique was fueled by the wind technique and increased its size while maintaining his course at Naruto. Naruto, you've did great. Now, can you tell me why my technique overcame yours? Is it because you are stronger than me? Obviously true, but that's not the reason. In order to fight using elemental ninjutsu, you must know which element is stronger than which. Therefore, when you face someone with a stronger element than yours, you can use other attacks. Remember the sequence. Fire beats wind. Wind beats lightning. Lighting beats earth. Earth beats water. Water beats fire. If you realize that, you will know if you have the advantage in element or not. Plus, being a wind user means your body is more vulnerable to fire attacks. This is important, so you must understand. If, for instance, you fight against Sasuke or any enemy with fire as his main element, don't try to block or use wind attacks, you'll just increase your odds of defeat and even your death. Do you understand? When Anko used the word death, Naruto understood the importance of knowing. He took a while, but he understood. The sequence was easy to memorize and the same concept applied to his body, so he understood. I understand Anko-sensei, just watch out for fire users and I will be fine. Fire is your worst enemy indeed, but do watch out for other elements as well. They may not deal as much damage as fire, but they do cause damage nonetheless. Now, I believe it's high time you earned yourself a bigger break of 2 days. You can thank your cage bunchins for that. However, I expect you to return here at 0800 hours for a small recap of things before we proceed with the information gathering department. You can do whatever you want, brat. Just don't overexert yourself too much. Naruto bowed to his sensei before walking towards the village. His clothes were a mess and it would be better if he simply threw it away. Anko wished the boy would get over it and appear inside a ninja clothing store, but she wouldn't push him to do it. After all, it would be quite hypocritical of her to say bad things about his taste in clothing. With the rest of the time free, she supposed it was high time she focused on her hobby torturing criminals. With Naruto. As the blonde walked throughout the village towards his apartment, he was receiving all kinds of stares. He didn't know that they were staring at his clothes, or rather the lack of it, so he just ignored them as he reached his apartment. Once inside, Naruto went for a quick shower in order to clean some of the bruises and sweat gathered from 3 weeks of never-ending training. He threw his clothes on the garbage after placing his sword on top of his bed and frowned since he knew that that was his last piece of clothing available. Right now, the only one he had to wear was a clean pair of black pants and an orange t-shirt. The reason he used the orange jumpsuit so much was because it was his first gift ever, supplied by the Sandame. Naruto remembered the day because it was the happiest day of his life. Now, it was all ruined. Even if it was for a good cause, Naruto still felt remorse for losing everything. Looking outside, Naruto realized that he just couldn't go through with the exams without a proper outfit. The one he had wasn't damage resilient. Releasing a long sigh, Naruto grabbed his toad-looking wallet and took his gathered money inside one of the pockets and left his apartment towards a nice store where he could purchase some new clothes. As he walked, he realized that he had 2 major problems. One, he knew that many stores wouldn't sell anything to him because of the damn fox. The second reason was his lack of knowledge on what clothes to buy. He knew he liked the color orange, but aside from that, he didn't know much else. He needed assistance in that regard, however he didn't know anyone who could help him. Sakura would be a considerable choice, but Naruto didn't feel like looking the entire village for her. Unfortunately, he was stuck with the choice of going inside store after store until someone decides to attend him with the regular prices. When he left the 4th store, the blonde was already giving up, actually thinking about asking Anko when he returned from his vacation. He was walking back to his apartment when he noticed a smaller shop located on his right. Naruto could remember every single shop he had been to in Konoha, but he never entered this one. Who knows, maybe, the owner doesn't treat him like crap. As soon as he entered, he saw that the store was practically empty of customers. However, it was quite packed with ninja tools and clothing. Looking around a bit, Naruto stopped once he found the cashier's table with a person snoring. He didn't know if it was a boy or a girl because of the hair. As he approached the attendant's position, he saw the Chinese-style dress and instantly remembered her from the Chunin exams. Now, what was her name again? It started with a T and he was quite sure an E and an N followed. 10 something. He scratched his head in order to remember, but he did eventually. Tenten said girl slowly opened her eyes, a little bit perturbed that someone awoke her. She was about to scream at her father for rudely awakening her when she remembered that the voice didn't belong to him. With her sight coming back, she could see that kid Naruto staring at her. But he was wearing something different. Ah, it's you Naruto. Ah, what's with the change in clothes? Last time I saw you, you were wearing that hideous jumpsuit. Naruto wasn't thrilled to hear Tenten's comments about his clothes, but he ignored it. Ah yes, I ruined it training. Do you work here, Tenten? The rather dumb question could be easily as just as rudely answered by Tenten, but she figured that Naruto was here as a customer instead of looking for her. Yes, I do. This is my father's shop. Naruto, upon hearing that, knew that he hit the jackpot. Tenten wouldn't treat him badly and wouldn't overprice him because she didn't know about his status as a Jinchuriki. Cool, I was hoping that I could find some new clothes for me, could you help me choose? Tenten let out a big yawn at the prospect of helping someone to choose an outfit from scratch, but a customer was a customer. Sure I can help you. What colors are you thinking about using? She visibly sighed once Naruto stopped and began to think about his choice for color. It was getting pretty late and he came in here without even thinking what he wanted in the first place. Well, I always enjoyed the color orange, but it doesn't need to be the central color, right? Maybe black or dark blue with some orange aspects would be nice. Do you have something like that? Also, I'm not that interested in long sleeves anymore, so pants and a t-shirt is fine. Tenten sighed once more, but went towards the clothes department to select some items according to Naruto's preference. She actually was hoping that he didn't choose orange as his main color, because first it wouldn't be ninja-like and second, she would have to turn him down, because quite certainly, her father wouldn't even consider using orange for his items. Now, if the choosing was left for her, she would go for black instead of blue. It mingled better with the ninja's shadow, as far as stealth was concerned. After selecting both more black than blue outfits, she showed them to Naruto, who then began to observe the items. Well, I guess from your picks, you think that black is more suited, huh Tenten? She would respond with a duh, but she just nodded and explained. Black is more suitable for stealth, and you already had orange and dark blue combination. Here this combination is nice, plus the fabric is resilient to physical damage and even kunais or shurikens. Naruto did concur with Tenten's assessment as the combination was quite interesting. It consisted of black Anbu-style pants with some orange stripes located on the thighs region, followed by a black polo shirt with small orange lines on the stomach. It had a zipper instead of buttons. Tenten even complemented the outfit with some fishnet clothing to go under the polo shirt and a pair of black sandals, to which Naruto concurred as well. Ah, I liked it Tenten, could you perhaps engrave an orange spiral seal on the shirt's back? Tenten nodded and started taking Naruto's measurements for the clothes manufacturing. She only had a showroom, not a stock of piled clothes. How many do you want Naruto? The blonde looked at her and then took the money he saved from his missions. How many can I afford with this much? 2, 3 Tenten frowned at the blonde's lack of tact as far as business was concerned, but counted the money anyway. Naruto was expecting to buy at least 2, because that's the price that everyone charged him. When Tenten told him a much higher number, he thought she was on crack or something. 7 sets in other shops would cost at least 3 times his saved amount. The surprise only took about 2 seconds before he realized that Tenten's shop was perhaps the only one, besides the ramen shop, which didn't overprice him. I only need 3 for now, thanks Tenten. Well, you have money for more if you wish. Perhaps a nice set of kunais and shurikens. We just received a new shipment and they are top-notch. I can give you 1 set of each and you still have change. Now, Naruto was hallucinating. But like before, Tenten's shop sold him the regular price just like all the other shops would if he wasn't who he was. Naruto accepted the new sets and gave Tenten the amount needed for the purchase. You can come back in about 2 days, Naruto. Everything will be ready by then. Here is your receipt. Naruto never knew it would be this easy as he left the store with a huge smile on his face. Perhaps, he found the store he was looking for all along. 2 days later. When his little vacation was over, Naruto was up and ready at 7 o'clock as he casually walked through the empty streets of Konohagakure. The precious few that enjoyed early mornings were there as well with him, but for some reason, none of them spared him any glances, which was surprising, seeing as 2 days ago, these very civilians shot glares at him back then. He wondered if they didn't recognize him because of the new clothes, and if that was true, then perhaps the orange jumpsuit was a dead giveaway. Nevertheless, it wasn't something to dwell on as right now, he was supposed to finish his training under Anko-sensei. As he walked towards the training ground, Naruto wondered what would happen to him if Anko wasn't around. The woman had the most sadistic personality he'd ever seen, but he couldn't deny how much she helped him to improve. Perhaps, if someone else was to tutor him for the exams, Naruto wouldn't be as prepared as he was now. Taking his growth rate into consideration, the genin imagined how much stronger he would be if Anko was there since he graduated from the academy. He didn't have anything against Kakashi-sensei, but on occasions, the man was too damn lazy for his liking, often choosing to let his team train on their own instead of actually training them. Such way of training may work on Sasuke and Sakura because they had a nice basis of the shinobi world, either by clan knowledge or simple book smarts. Naruto wasn't like them. He only learned through practice. He preferred Anko's way of doing things easily. Too bad the woman wouldn't be around after the exams, though. Naruto arrived at the training ground in half an hour, hence he had another half an hour until Anko arrived. Or so he thought as a great load of snakes appeared out of nowhere and attacked him. Sighing in dismay, Naruto grabbed his Kadashi and, focusing wind chakra through it, sliced the snakes in multiple pieces before jumping to the side as Anko appeared behind him with a kunai ready to impale him. Naruto didn't create much distance between her, though, which allowed him to engage against his sensei using his sword. Anko wasn't stupid to parry her kunai with Naruto's wind chakra Kadashi, hence why she used a simple Kawarimi when Naruto attacked her. She appeared 20 meters to his right side before going through hand seals. Haten Gakakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release. Grand Fireball Technique. Quickly summoning 10 cage bunchins, Naruto used a Kawarimi with the furthest clone and sent the others to attack. He remained behind while the bunchins dealt with Anko, or rather Anko dealt with the bunchins. After seeing the direction she was moving to attack, he threw a couple of shurikens at the position Anko was going to be. The woman was about to deflect the projectiles when she saw her mistake. As soon as she grabbed the kunai to deflect them, she saw the genin making some hand seals. Dueton Repushu, Wind Release. Gale Wind Palm Technique. The shurikens received the extra speed with grace as both of them impaled Anko right on her chest. Her body was replaced with mud. He stood his ground, waiting for the attack to come, but no one ever came. He turned and saw his sensei sitting on a gigantic stone eating some dango for breakfast. Naruto could see that the woman was enjoying every second of her favorite dish. Too bad she wasn't introduced to the world's best food, ramen. He slowly walked towards his sensei, a little bit perturbed about the fact that she was declaring her love to the food as it was part of a ritual. However, he realized that he did the same thing with his favorite dish. That's the welcome I receive, Anko-sensei. I was 30 minutes early for the meeting. The woman smiled sweetly at the kid before finishing her last piece of dango. Afterward, she jumped from the rock and stood right in front of her student. Wow brat, I would never think you'd change your wardrobe so drastically. What happened? Naruto just looked at her as if she didn't remember that it was she who destroyed every cloth he possessed. I lost all of them in training, remember? So I went into this shop 2 days ago and bought these, pretty cool huh? The black arm braces were my idea. Naruto bought them when he returned to the store yesterday to pick up his clothes. Anko smiled and decided to check the boy over from head to toe. She took a while to size him up from the front before turning to the back. She knew that the boy enjoyed the color orange, and while it wasn't the best of color to a ninja, he managed to pick a nice outfit. It was an extreme improvement from before, seeing as Naruto's old clothes wasn't considered ninja-like at all. Also, like he said, the arm braces were a nice touch, especially considering that they could very well be used against Naruto's first opponent. When a Hyuga used their Jaiuken, one touch from them and the opponent was dealt with. With the arm braces, Naruto could use them to block the Jaiuken strikes. Nice to see you using your brain, kid, indeed it's a nice outfit, although I'm pretty sure it wasn't you who picked it. Naruto frowned at the woman, which earned a couple seconds of laughter from Anko. Now, enough of that, I chose to test you that way to see your reflexes, which was good. You can never walk in anywhere and don't expect retaliation. Now, on this last week, like I said, we'll be covering the information on your opponents. However, I decided to add something else. The last one of the shinobi arts, which I know you suck at, Jinjutsu or rather how to detect and dispel one. Despite the obvious jab to his skills, Naruto approved. It was his biggest weakness after all. Now, take a seat and tell me about what do you know about Niji. The entire month of training passed by and Naruto could say he detested only one part of it. Anko found that indeed the blonde lacked in the intellectual department a bit as it took a while for him to understand the mechanics of the Dijutsu Byakugan as well as others' abilities. In the end, though, Anko and Naruto managed to cover a great deal of knowledge of all the combatants, even the ones that Naruto wouldn't likely fight against, considering the results of each fight. Anko, at the end of the training, surmised that Naruto was as ready as he'll ever be for the third phase of the exams. Probably his strongest weakness would be his brashness, this being the only handicap she couldn't cure him of. But the Hyuga, attacking without an action plan was considered suicide, and, thus, she spent an entire day reminding him of that. Right now, she couldn't do anything more for him, though. She hoped that the runt would perform well when the time came. One aspect that the judges take into consideration, more than anything, is the strategy. Strength and speed alone was no guarantee of promotion. Anko at least hoped that Naruto remembered that when facing the Hyuga as well as the others. She knew what happened between her student and Hyuga Niji at the preliminaries, and she was afraid that Naruto would forget everything he learned thus far, choosing to rely on brute force instead of the strategy they came up with during their conversations. Well, she did what she could given the time frame, she reasoned. After meeting with the brat for the last time before the exams, she figured it was high time she filled the tank with dango and hot sake. Naruto, for his part, took his time thanking Anko for her immense help throughout the month before walking back to his apartment. He still had 2 days until the tournament, so he figured he would do nothing for the majority of the day, which was about to turn into night in a few minutes. It took him less than half an hour from the training ground towards his apartment. Quickly opening the door with a yawn, the blonde figured that it was high time he took a nice nap. He would have plenty of time to rest his body and restore his chakra capacity. Once he got inside the apartment, though, he sensed that something was wrong. 1. He remembered closing the only window in the room once he left, and 2. The lock didn't take nearly as long as it normally took to open. When he reached the living room, he was surprised to see a man sleeping on his couch. His appearance was kind of weird, Naruto reasoned. Even if the man was sleeping, Naruto wouldn't put it past him not to retaliate. The blonde placed his sword inches from the man's neck. "Boy, who are you and what are you doing sleeping on my couch?" The noise awakened the man, who only opened his right eye and yawned some before getting up. "What took you so long to get here, brat? I've been waiting here for you for 3 hours now." Naruto's sweat dropped at the man's accusation. He never even met the old geezer before. "I don't even know you, old geezer, and you didn't answer my question." Jiraiya blinked at the blonde before figuring that an introduction was in order. "I'm Jiraiya of the Sannin, you brat. Ha kid these days, no respect. The reason I'm here is because I'm to escort you to the Hokage's office. Now come on, I don't have all day." Naruto, despite knowing something about the Sannins, didn't express the respect the elder man thought he would receive. Instead, Naruto just grumbled a few incoherent words and went to the bathroom to clean himself a bit. The perverted Sannin ended up being amused of the little genin's reaction and stood in the middle of the living room, contemplating everything around him. His sensei, the Sandaime Hokage, shared quite a lot of information with him about Naruto, including the month he trained with the Psycho Special Joun in Mitarashi Anko. What was most impressive was that the brat handled that much time with her. Most anbus wouldn't last more than 10 days. Soon Naruto exited the bathroom and still complaining. "Okay, let's get this over with already. I was about to sleep right now." Jiraiya smirked once more and followed the blonde as they traveled through the rooftops towards the Hokage's office. But Sasuke. Going through hand seals, Uchiha Sasuke began focusing lightning chakra through his right hand as he looked at his target, a considerably sized rock with a giant hole in the middle. He was sweating profusely because of the amount of control needed for this ultimate technique, his sensei's creation. The Chidori was Sasuke's last item to cover throughout the 1 month of training. Kakashi was a few meters to his right and simply observed his student. Sasuke came a long way in terms of taijutsu, agility and ninjutsu. He did inherit his clan's genius as it didn't take him more than 10 minutes to learn a new jutsu and incorporate it to his strategy. Of course, the Sharingan had a lot to do with that. Kakashi wasn't against the idea of Sasuke using his eyes to learn as he had one as well. It's not to say that Sasuke kept learning one ninjutsu after another. He asked Kakashi to teach him only lightning-based jutsus as it was his other affinity along with fire. Aside from ninjutsu, Sasuke sparred a lot with Kakashi, both with and without his Sharingan. Kakashi, not once, needed to use his Sharingan, but that didn't mean that Sasuke's skill didn't improve. It just meant to prove that Kakashi wouldn't need to use it against a genin, even if it's an Uchiha. Right now, Sasuke managed to collect the required energy and concentration for the Chidori and charged at the rock with impressive speed before carving a similar hole next to the other one. The boy kneeled on the ground soon afterward, panting. "It appears that 2 is your limit, huh Sasuke?" Kakashi said, earning a nod from the Uchiha. "At least without the cursed seal, that is." Kakashi admitted not enjoying the time when Sasuke trained with the cursed seal. It gave the Uchiha more power, more chakra and more speed, but it wasn't natural in his book. He hoped that the Hokage knew what he was doing, letting Sasuke use the cursed seal. The Uchiha just took a seat where he stood. Today was his last day as well, and he figured that he was ready for the exams. Tsubaku no Gaara was a strong foe from what he saw at the preliminaries, but he believed that his speed was enough to overcome that ultimate defense of his. After defeating Gaara, his next opponent would be the winner of the first fight between Naruto and Hyuga Neji. It has been an entire month since Sasuke last saw his teammate and he actually wondered how much stronger the dope became under that woman's guidance. Kakashi told him that he paid a visit to Naruto once and saw him almost beaten to death. When questioned about it, Kakashi briefly explained Anko's methods and how it probably was more effective to Naruto than a teacher boring him with long theories. Sasuke ended up agreeing with said logic as he knew Naruto would be bored with any sort of explanation that took longer than 30 seconds. "So it appears that our time is up, huh?" Sasuke said, earning a nod from Kakashi. It also worked well, since Kakashi had an appointment with the Hokage. He wasn't bothered by the fact that the meeting had started half an hour ago. At the Hokage's office. Inside the Hokage's office, 3 individuals were seriously considering what would happen if Kakashi were to suddenly disappear for a while. All 3 of them considered different type of tortures for the Scarecrow Jounin. Well, 2 of them, because Naruto actually settled for a nice nap on the ground instead. He was pretty tired upon arriving home and knowing his sensei, he realized that it would take at least another hour for him to show up. Suddenly, a smoke appeared in the room, waking Naruto up. First he was dragged to this meeting, only later being informed that nothing would happen until Kakashi arrived, which would be close to 2 hours from now. Naruto even tried sleeping, and Kakashi once more took that away from him by showing up only half an hour late instead of the usual 2 hours. "Oh sorry I was late." Sasuke decided to play with poison and had to be taken to the hospital for the cure. No one emitted a single noise in the room and it was clear that no one believed that to be true. Using your students as an excuse was low Kakashi, really low. The Hokage surmised as he had yet to hear this type of excuse from Kakashi. Kakashi merely smiled at that before the meeting started. It actually took a while for Hiruzen, Jiraiya and Naruto to stop picturing a nice session of torture for the Jounin. After that was done, the 3 eldest in the room started discussing some trivial things about the village's security and Naruto just kept listening with plain boredom. His eyes were almost shutting once more as he couldn't believe that someone would drag him into a meeting he wouldn't even be a part of. Suddenly, though, his patience was at an end. He wanted to sleep goddammit, not listen to them talking between each other. "Excuse me Hokage Jiji, but can I go now? I don't know why I was summoned here," Naruto said, earning the attention of everyone in the room. My apologies Naruto. No, you can't go, I'm afraid. We just want to know one thing from you." Naruto nodded, ushering the Hokage to continue. "It has come to my knowledge that something happened between you and Orochimaru at the second stage of the Chunin exams. I only wish to know why you haven't approached me showing the red seal imprinted on your neck." Naruto looked around nervously to the 3 elder individuals and sighed, wondering how they figured it out. Perhaps, Anko spotted it and told them about it. He figured that telling any other story besides the truth wouldn't help ease the situation, so he told everything, beginning from the part when he was bitten as well as the conversation he had with the fox. Along the way, all 3 were surprised upon hearing that it was due to Kyubi's interference that the seal became red instead of the usual black color. When he finished the explanation, he realized that their faces changed from the beginning of the meeting. He was screwed and he knew it. Even the Hokage was showing an angered face he had never seen before. Truth be told, the Hokage wasn't mad at Naruto, except the fact that the genin didn't consider reporting this incident. Whom he was truly mad at was his ex-student as well as the damn beast that resided within Naruto's stomach. One gave the other more juice to pump in Naruto's chakra supply. Too much power could bring unforeseen consequences, and for what? An empty desire for revenge, perhaps. As far as the fox was concerned, it wanting more power was no shock to the old Hokage. It's not like the beast ever changed its mindset. Now, he would have to deal with this threat accordingly, if not both Naruto and Sasuke could become trouble for Konohagakure. Quickly producing his pipe, the Hokage gave a few puffs before looking at the blonde. "First of all, Naruto, the only reason I'm mad with you was the fact that you hadn't told me or anyone about what happened, besides that, nothing more. I will extend the same courtesy that Sasuke received and allow you to use the cursed seal. However, you must use this power to protect the village or your comrades, never for personal gains." Naruto kept looking at the old man for a while before smiling. "Don't sweat it Hokage Jiji. I don't enjoy using it as I told the damn furball. I will only resort to it if necessary. You have my word." The Hokage smiled before turning to Jiraiya. "Naruto, as you've been properly introduced, this is Jiraiya, a member of the Sannin and our village's most skilled seal master. I called him here so that he could take a look at your other seal." The blonde nodded before he was asked to lift his shirt and focus a bit of chakra. Jiraiya kneeled in front of him and analyzed the seal that was responsible for keeping the fox caged. He started emitting a grave noise as if he had found something that piqued his interest. Naruto saw it and immediately became preoccupied. He immediately asked what was wrong, but Jiraiya just continued with the same noise as before, looking at the brat's face and then looking back at the seal before emitting the same noise one more time. By now, Naruto was starting to picture the worst-case scenario based on Jiraiya's answers or lack thereof. Suddenly, the perverted Sannin got up and with a huge smile on his face, announced his verdict. "Nothing wrong, brat, the seal is as good as it always has been." All of them ignored Naruto, who was screaming obscenities at the Sannin for worrying him. "Now, I was meaning to ask you something, brat, care to join me for some ramen?" The word managed to quiet the kid down and he eagerly nodded before both left the office towards the best ramen place in Konoha. "The Ichiraku's?" Say, Naruto asked Jiraiya as he watched the blonde finish his fourth bowl and begin the fifth. "Do you feel prepared for the Chunin tournament in 2 days?" "You bet ya. Anko-sensei has taught me a lot and I will kick everyone's ass, believe it." Naruto even punched the air before resuming the task of finishing bowl after bowl of ramen. "I can see that, and did she ever mention anything about summons to you?" Jiraiya asked before Naruto showed his long thinking pose. "I guess not. Well, I'd like to show you something. Are you finished?" The pervert couldn't take his eyes off the pile of bowls that rested in front of him. It had to be the Kyubi somehow. No human being could eat 20 bowls of ramen like that. The perverted now understood why the owners of the tent were so happy to see Naruto. With him alone, they could sell an entire day's worth of meals and earn a great profit. Quickly paying the bill, he and Naruto left towards one of the training grounds. None of them turned to see Tucci and AM grinning from ear to ear at the fact that they've actually sold the equivalent of an entire week's supply of their product. One of the training grounds. After a bit of walking, Naruto and Jiraiya stopped near a small water stream, which happened to be one of Konoha's many training grounds. "Okay, brat. Now that we're here, I want to talk to you about a jutsu called Kuchius no Jutsu, summoning technique." To Naruto's confused face, Jiraiya began the explanation. Kuchius no Jutsu is a space-time ninjutsu that allows a ninja to call upon animals to fight with him or her. A few things are required for such technique, such as a great amount of chakra, a signed contract and a few drops of blood. "Here, let me show you what it is," Jiraiya said before biting his thumb and moving his hands to form the needed hand seals. He, then, slammed his hand on the ground before smoke surrounded him and Naruto. Suddenly, right in front of Naruto, appeared a horse-sized toad and Jiraiya was seating on top of it. "I, for instance, have a contract with the toads and I can call upon them to aid me if need arises. Would you like to summon them as well, kid?" Naruto looked at the toad in front of him and started drooling for a while at the prospect of being able to do something like that. However, something in his mind clicked and he remembered Anko's teachings. "Why are you giving me this jutsu just like that? We've only met like 2 hours ago." Jiraiya was obviously surprised by the suspicious question. Surely, he thought that the kid would be ecstatic to learn new stuff. He guessed that Anko must have drilled some important knowledge in his head. It is considered a great honor, kid, to be able to summon the toads. The Hokage felt it was wise to give it to you and I concur with him. He asked me this favor and I intend to honor it. Now, before anything, you'll have to sign your name into this contract. As soon as the words left Jiraiya's mouth, the toad extended his tongue towards Naruto and handed him the contract. While the blonde was studying the scroll a bit, Jiraiya smiled seeing as Naruto stopped asking questions about why he was being allowed to sign the toad contract, one which was only signed by 2 people so far. And he never said which Hokage asked him, so Naruto must have thought it was the Sandaime. As soon as Naruto opened the scroll, he saw only 2 names written and opened his eyes wide at the mention of the second name. The Yondaime Hokage was his hero and role model ever since he started the academy, and now he would learn a technique that was used by him as well. Biting his thumb, Naruto wrote his name on the 3rd column next to the Yondaime's name before the scroll wrapped itself and was collected by the toad, which then vanished in thin air. Jiraiya, then, approached Naruto's position and quickly taught him the hand seals needed for the jutsu. To his great surprise, Naruto caught the sequence quite quick and gave his first try. As soon as he slammed the hand on the ground, he saw the gathered smoke and smiled in anticipation. To Jiraiya's shocked expression, appeared a battle toad the same size as the red one which appeared with the contract. This toad had black samurai armor and 2 swords strapped on his back. If his smile or lack thereof was any indication, the toad wasn't friendly. The toad in question looked around and spotted Jiraiya. "Jiraiya-sama, what can I do to assist?" "My name is Gamatsurugi." The perverted Sannin placed both hands on each side of his waist and smiled. "Nice to meet you, Gamatsurugi-san, but it wasn't me who summoned you. It was the blonde kid behind you." The toad in question turned and looked at the brat who was looking at him. It took a couple of seconds to realize that the kid was actually looking at his swords. "So, I gather that you are the toad's new summoner, then. And you appreciate my swords. I must say yours is impressive as well, kid. I always enjoy a nice kinjutsu practice and I believe this is a good test as any." Gamatsurugi took one of his swords and waited for Naruto to take his. Normally, the test would be conducted by Gamabunta-sama, but I believe myself to be worthy enough of said honor as well. If you manage to hold your own in a battle against me, kid, then you have the right to summon our kind anytime. Naruto nodded, and with a smile, he grabbed his Kadashi and held it in a reverse grip in front of him, just like Anko had instructed. Jiraiya kneeled on the ground a few meters away from the two as he looked at the blonde. Jiraiya could see that Anko's training bore great fruits if Naruto's determination eyes were any indication. Also, from Naruto's file, brashness was one of his characteristics. Therefore, he was surprised to see that the kid was standing there studying his opponent instead of attacking right away. The toad nodded at Naruto's focus and decided to attack first. Even if the kid had fire in his eyes, the toad was considered the most skilled sword fighter of his homeland. There was no way the kid could hold on. Using his speed, Gamatsurugi appeared in front of Naruto and swung his sword, aiming Naruto's shoulder. The noise of metal clashing with metal surprised everyone, and the two stood in the middle of the clearing, clenching swords. Jiraiya could see a blue glow surrounding Naruto's weapon, and he realized with a smile that the kid was using wind chakra to strengthen the sword. Loosening his grip a bit and allowing the toad to lose his balance, Naruto appeared from the side and aimed a precise strike, which was blocked by the toad before it attempted a fierce kick at the genin. Naruto used a quick arrow and appeared on the other side, aiming another strike against the toad. Gamatsurugi managed to parry once more before aiming another attack on Naruto. This one merely sliced a couple of hair as Naruto ducked and managed to strike the toad using the back of his sword's hilt. Not wanting to relent, Naruto charged the toad with his wind-infused weapon and swung his sword with all his strength. The toad saw the move and managed to parry the technique, albeit barely. The strength of the attack forced him to back off a bit. Jiraiya never ceased to smile as he observed Naruto's prowess with the sword in such a small time frame. He wondered what approach was used by Anko to achieve such great results. "You're good and all, kid, but now it seems I must increase the pace," the toad said before grabbing the second sword. Naruto immediately paled at the prospect of being killed here. So far, he only managed a few hits here and there. His opponent was much stronger with just one sword. 2, now, would be suicide. Nevertheless, he stood there facing the toad, expecting the move. He would have to resort to other skills aside from swords. As soon as Gamatsurugi made his move, Naruto threw his sword in the air and began a quick series of hand seals, surprising Jiraiya. He gathered a great load of air inside his lungs. Fuetin to Tapa, wind release. Great breakthrough technique. Before the toad could come within inches from Naruto, the boy unleashed a powerful gust of wind that sent the toad flying a great distance away. Besides this, the technique was laced with cutting chakra, so the toad's body was severely hurt. Despite that, the toad smiled as he got up and placed both swords on its back once more. It appeared in front of the blonde and landed on of its hands on top of his shoulder. The toad didn't need to say anything as Naruto clearly passed the test. It merely nodded before vanishing in smoke, surprising Naruto, who then turned to Jiraiya for questioning. He only had the chakra you supplied him with. Once that chakra runs out, he can't sustain the link and therefore has to go back to his realm. Nevertheless, you did good, kid. Go get some rest for the tournament. The blonde smirked before he said goodbye to the pervert. Jiraiya looked at the kid's back with a smile on his face. At first, he figured that it would be prudent to help Naruto more for the exams. Circumstances arose that interrupted that initial plan. After all, it's not every day he uncovers the existence of an organization out there that is after the nine-tailed beasts, including the one that resides inside Naruto. Their members were unknown at this point, but his sources told that all of them were S-ranked criminals. If one of them was to come after the genin, Naruto wouldn't know how to defend himself. This meant that the kid must be trained and by someone who can uncover his full potential. Mitarashi Anko's methods were brutal, Jiraiya remembered. She must have beaten the kid many times until he understood what Anko was trying to teach. However, Jiraiya knew ways around that in order to further achieve Naruto's untapped potential. And he wasn't thinking of the cursed seal. Tournament day. 2 days passed in a blur for Konoha as the date of the last phase of the Chunin exams arrived. The entire village was ecstatic and lots of merchants and tourists flooded the streets. Unfortunately, the boom in the village's economy comes with a bigger risk. With this many, it becomes rather difficult to provide the same level of security. Anbus were doing everything they could to scout the entire region after probable schemes from outside sources. The stadium in which would soon host the Chunin tournament was slowly being filled with all kinds of people. From simple tourists to daimyos to low-level genins to high-ranking jounin officers, everyone came to see a splendid show. The most anticipated was no doubt the first Uchiha ever to appear since the clan's massacre a long time ago. Uchiha Sasuke was considered the safest bet there was, with Hyuga Neji coming in close second. The Chunin hopefuls were already aligned in front of the host Shiranui Genma, a special jounin that used a bandana to hold his hair and had a senbon on his mouth. All the genin's attention turned to Naruto, though, as he appeared wearing different clothes, as well as the sword strapped on his back. His posture did change a bit from 1 month ago. Sasuke kept looking at his partner, wondering about the change in appearance. He wondered about the changes that weren't visible, his skills of the ninja arts. The sword on his back indicates that the dobe has been practicing kenjutsu. However, 1 month alone of practice with it couldn't be counted as an advantage. Sasuke was tempted to use his Sharingan and take a closer look at Naruto's chakra, but in doing that, he would be violating the rules. It took half an hour for the crowd to fill the seats and for the Hokage to enunciate the beginning of the tournament. By the Sandame's side were his 2 bodyguards as well as the Kazekage who accepted the invitation to attend the exams next to the Hokage. Genma nodded at the Hokage and issued all the genins to leave the area, except for Uzumaki Naruto and Hyuga Neji. Neji, as usual, was showing his confident bearing smug attitude at Naruto, while the blonde looked at Neji, promising to deliver the punishment like he said before. Naruto remembered Anko's words about emotions in the middle of direct combat. She explained it to him constantly that by no means could he charge against a Hyuga face-to-face in direct combat. In other words, standing within inches from his opponent was sure defeat. Naruto wouldn't have that and created some space between them while waiting for the proctor to start the battle. Of course, it didn't mean that Neji wouldn't use a few words here and then. You should forfeit right now. You may have changed your clothes, but you're still a failure. Neji even widened his smirk as to show that Naruto was too much beneath him. I promised I would beat you, and I do intend to fulfill it. I've trained long and hard to get here, and I'm not going to back away just because my opponent's ego is bigger than the Hokage monument. Naruto got into fighting position, earning a slight mocking laughter from Neji before he also got into position. Genma looked at one another before issuing the fight to begin. Neji charged with his speed and his Byakugan on as he already pinpointed Naruto's Tenketsus. As soon as Neji arrived within inches from Naruto's position, he aimed at the one of them, but was surprised when Naruto managed to block the strikes by blocking his wrists. Neji increased the pace of his strikes, but Naruto managed to follow him while maintaining a safe distance. As soon as he managed to block one last strike, Naruto placed one step forward and disrupted Neji's guard before landing a powerful punch on Neji's face, surprising everyone. Naruto understood what Anko was trying to tell him about the Gyuukin style of fighting. The blonde wasn't about to wait for another attack and summoned 3 Kage Bunshins to attack while he remained behind. The Bunshins immediately charged and Neji used his agility to try and take care of them. To his surprise, though, the team of Bunshins fought with deadly proficiency and each managed to cover the other. So when Neji moved to strike one, he had to back off because another would move from behind and attack. His Byakugan kept close attention at all 4 Narutos, even the one that stood at the back doing nothing. He gritted his teeth in annoyance at this loser before quickening the pace and dealing with all 3 at the same time. His smirk didn't last long as an entire barrage of shurikens came charging at him with impressive speed. Neji managed to dodge the projectiles, but snarled once he felt one of them slice his face a little bit, causing a small line of blood to appear. Naruto smirked and pulled more shurikens from his pouch before throwing them at Neji. The Hyuga managed to see them with the Byakugan and was about to dodge when he saw Naruto doing hand seals. Everyone became surprised at seeing Naruto performing an elemental jutsu. Gyuutin Repushu, Wind Release. Gale Wind Palm Technique. The projectiles received the extra push and increased their speed. Neji couldn't keep up and the projectiles were approaching fast. He was hoping not to use this technique until later on, but the damn loser was pushing his buttons a lot. Neji began to spin his body rapidly and focusing chakra throughout all his Tenketsus at the same time, earning shocked looks from the Hyuga clan's main branch because that move happens to be from them. Neji managed to create a dome of blue chakra that was capable of deflecting the shurikens, even with the aid of wind chakra. Naruto sure was surprised since he didn't know about that ability. You see now how much of a failure you are compared to me. Neji said with a smirk on his face, but he was slightly bothered by the fact that Naruto was smiling as well. That was a neat trick, Neji. But it's merely defensive. So far, you haven't even landed one hit on me, whereas I managed to draw your precious blood. The entire stadium was dead silent as everyone was focused on the battle. So far, Naruto's growth was the most surprising, considering that a month ago, he could barely do anything right. Now, here he was holding his own against a genin more experienced and who was nominated Rookie of the last year 1 year ago. Neji, for his part, couldn't admit it out loud, but Naruto was right. So far, the only one with a clear hit was the failure. Neji smirked, though. Naruto may have improved in skills lately, but at the distance he was in, there was no doubt in Neji's mind that he would win this match with his next move. This is when our fight ends, you are within my field of divination. Naruto looked surprised because he didn't know what was going on. He wasn't about to stay still, though, that's for sure. As soon as Neji vanished in order to begin his deadly technique, Naruto finished a couple of hand seals needed to replace himself with one of the shurikens that he threw at Neji. When the Hyuga landed the first two strikes, he was shocked to see Naruto's body vanishing, and a shuriken appeared. The Hyuga's Byakugan spotted Naruto already finishing a sequence of hand seals before gathering air inside his lungs. Naruto blew up a strong torrent of wind straight at Neji, who didn't have time to use his ultimate defense technique and received the full technique. His body was sent flying, while the cutting edge of the technique began its work, giving Neji a great number of wounds. Neji's body was dragged a long distance away, while clenching his teeth at the amount of pain received by the wind technique. Everyone in the stadium looked shocked at such a strong technique. Tenten was one of them as she was sure Naruto wouldn't have a chance against Neji. Anko appeared smiling at the brat's unique usage of Kawarimi and sneak attack the enemy. There was no way Neji would get up from that attack, and even if he did, his body was so badly hurt. It appears that Naruto learned a lot from you, Anko. Kakashi said by her side, which earned a nod from the woman. The brat owned the entire match from beginning to finish. Anko commented with a smile on her face, earning nods from Asuma and Kurenai who were sitting close to them. Asuma smiled seeing as the scroll he gave to Anko helped the kid. He was happy seeing as he had found another wind user in Konoha. Sasuke smirked at Naruto's new techniques from the Genin booth as did Shikamaru and Shino. Naruto certainly surprised everyone. Back at the arena, Neji slowly got up from the ground as he held his right bleeding arm. His entire body was beaten and covered with bruises. Whatever the failure hit him with, it hurt more than anything he ever felt before. He managed to drag his body close to the center of the arena as he looked at Naruto with his snarling teeth. Genma saw the state Neji's body was in and nodded, seeing as the fight was over. Before he could end it, however, Neji urged him not to by shouting to the proctor. Apparently, the kid received a dirty blow to his pride upon being beaten by someone he considered a failure. Unfortunately, though, in Neji not allowing the battle to end, it also allowed Naruto to move and deliver a strong reverse kick on his chest, which sent him flying once more towards the ground. Unfortunately, Neji's head ended up receiving the first impact and he was unconscious soon afterward, thus not being able to continue. Winner of the first match is Uzumaki Naruto. Genma announced, before pointing his hand at the baffled Naruto, who took a long while to understand that he had won the match. Up on the stands, everyone was contemplating the first round of the Chunin tournament as it happened to be quite a shock to those with conservative ideals. After all, it's not every day that a Hyuga elite is so easily beaten by someone without any clan history like Naruto. The fact that Naruto was considered a class clown and that he barely graduated the academy contributed to everyone's shock at the moment. The blonde went from a barely passable shinobi to Chunin material in 1 month's time. Even if he couldn't know about Neji's main house techniques, Naruto had done his homework regarding the Byakugan and the Jyuukin, understanding that it only took one opening to end a fight. That alone gave him a great number of points for promotion. The Genins from Naruto's classroom all gawked at what they saw. Sakura and Ino had doubt if Naruto could beat Neji, hence why none of them even considered the possibility. Choji and Kiba thought the same way, though they acknowledged Naruto's severe improvement. They couldn't point any wasted move from the blonde. And all of them somehow knew that Naruto had yet to show all his skills. From what they saw, Naruto had a sword strapped on his back and he not once bothered to reach it. Furthermore, he didn't use that strange energy sensed at the Forest of Death, which could be considered an easy option for him. The opinion that came from the cage booth was mixed. Sandaime Hokage looked at the boy at the arena, accepting the cheers from the audience with a smile on his face. He knew that Anko's method of training would do wonders for the boy. The Kazekage, though, couldn't help but smile as his second experiment was getting stronger. Genma, at the arena, quickly announced the second match and ushered Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaku no Gaara to join him at the arena. Naruto went quickly to the Genin booth as he passed by Sasuke, but not before giving him thumbs up. Sasuke, strangely, returned the greeting with a confident smile and a nod of his head. He said that he would face Naruto next and told the blonde to get ready. Naruto nodded as he watched Sasuke leave the tunnel before suddenly he felt the offensive aura approach him from behind. 1 second later, Gaara passed by him with his cold exterior and looked at Naruto from the corner of his eye. The two looked at each other for a while before Gaara turned his sight towards the end of the tunnel that would lead to the arena and started walking. Mother is asking for your blood. After I'm done with the Uchiha, you're next. Naruto was used to strong enemies using the same level of killing intent as Gaara, so he wasn't as fazed as Gaara expected. Naruto then went up the stairs that would lead to the Genin booth. He was confident that Sasuke wouldn't be defeated that easily, even if this guy appeared to be the same as him. Sasuke x Gaara. After Sasuke joined the arena next to Genma, the special Jounin waited for the crowd to finish their unbelievably loud and exaggerated cheer for the kid. As the last loyal Uchiha, everyone placed a great load of expectation on the kid. Genma knew that the kid shouldn't bear such burden. The look on his face, though, indicated that he wasn't concerned about the pressure. The clan never before produced poor quality shinobi and Sasuke would be no exception. The only thing needed of him was not to succumb to others' expectation and lead his life as normal as possible. The crowd attended Genma's wish and silenced after a couple of minutes, allowing the special Jounin to proceed with the fight. Looking at both combatants for a while, Genma authorized the fight to commence. Uchiha Sasuke wasted no time and charged at Gaara with straight jutsu through speed that he didn't possess before. Gaara wasn't phased though and sent a beam of sand to stop the Uchiha's movement. Sasuke evaded the attack and got into position behind the sand genin before aiming a straight punch at Gaara's face, which was blocked by the sand. The sand genin was once again surprised that one more ninja managed to sneak behind him. Sasuke maintained his pressure and left Gaara's back, going forward and landing a fierce kick on Gaara's chest. The sand wasn't fast enough to block it and Gaara was sent flying because of it. Sasuke once more didn't relent and went through hand seals. Heitan Gakakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release. Grand Fireball Technique. The gigantic meteor of fire charged Gaara with impressive speeds, but the sand managed to block the impact. The technique was so hot that it turned the sand into glass. Sasuke charged once more and this time Gaara attacked more aggressively instead of merely defending himself. Because of this, Sasuke was forced to activate his Sharingan in order to evade the sand projectiles thrown by Gaara. After evading the last of them, Sasuke grabbed a few shurikens of his own and threw them at Gaara. The sand genin, for his part, just stood there, but the sand lifted a barrier to catch the projectiles. Sasuke saw what would happen from the Sharingan and charged while the sand barrier was transformed into a sand bunshin, a replica of Gaara. Sasuke connected a fierce chop on the bunshin's neck, thus dispelling it, before charging against the original once more. Even if the Uchiha managed to dodge Gaara's sand without the Sharingan, now he could see it in slow motion, evading it and landing a strong punch on Gaara's face, even before he realized Sasuke's actual position. After the blows, Gaara's face began to show cracks, revealing his sand armor. His anger at this was quite evident and Sasuke only smirked at this. It was clear that he was being underestimated by Gaara and that would cost him dearly. Sasuke just remained in his usual position in order to study his opponent's next moves as well as gather a bit of his stamina back. Moving like that posed great stress on his limbs. Suddenly, though, Sasuke's instinct told him to jump just as a sand beam erupted from the ground, trying to catch his leg. Looking at Gaara, he was momentarily surprised because he couldn't anticipate the movement. He realized, in midair, that the attack came from underneath and he couldn't see it. In midair, Sasuke went through hand seals for a new jutsu he had mastered thanks to Kakashi-sensei. Raiden Rakurai, Lightning Release. Thunderbolt Technique. Suddenly a small black cloud appeared up in the sky and released a thin lightning towards Gaara, who was caught by surprise. The sand was merely consisted of earth and earth was weak against lightning. Sasuke's technique pierced Gaara's defense like it wasn't there in the first place. Gaara emitted a loud scream as thousands of volts circulated through his body. Suddenly, though, the scream changed its tone and it sounded demonic, much to everyone's surprise, including Sasuke as he landed on the ground. Gaara started bleeding and looked at Sasuke with pure rage. His eyes were suddenly transformed as the sand around him began to envelop Gaara in a form of cocoon. Sasuke wouldn't allow that and unleashed another grand fireball technique at Gaara. Sasuke was surprised, though, when he saw that this new barrier not only parried his attack but also suffered no damage whatsoever. Looking at the cocoon in front of him, Sasuke realized that he needed something stronger to penetrate it. He doubted that his first-rate jutsu would be as effective and decided to use something else. Normally, he would use this trump card later, seeing as this was his first battle of the tournament. However, the circumstances pretty much demanded it. He gave some space and performed a sequence of 3 hand seals before holding his right hand facing up and the left one holding his right wrist. Charging this technique would take some time, but he was confident that he would have it. If not, his Sharingan will warn him beforehand. Suddenly, before everyone's shocked eyes, an unbearable noise began to fill the arena as Sasuke's right hand started to glow with lightning energy. Those who recognized the technique looked at the creator for explanation, but the man's gaze was entirely fixed on his student. Kakashi told Sasuke to use this technique only when a comrade was in danger, and he understood why the Uchiha was considering it. This Gaara managed to produce a tough defense that only A-rank jutsus could pierce. Furthermore, no fire jutsu could pierce earth-based techniques, so Sasuke's actions are at least understandable. As soon as the technique was finished, Sasuke charged with all the speed he could muster, as it was required of him. Half of the technique relied on the user's speed in order to cause more impact. And Sasuke was inches from Gaara's cocoon, his eyes alerted him to sudden earth spikes that arose, and he managed to dodge it before thrusting his strongest technique inside. The lightning attack managed to pierce the wall, and Sasuke heard the noise of flesh being pierced before smiling. Gaara emitted another scream, but this time it was completely demonic, which caused the civilian part of the stand to shake in fear. The wound was so deep that Gaara couldn't maintain its hold on the cocoon, and thus the sand began to dissolve, showing an injured Gaara. He was holding his injured shoulder while looking at his opponent. Sasuke was about to charge once more and deal with the fight for good when a great number of feathers started falling from the sky, surprising both Sasuke and Genma as well as the entire stadium. All ninjas were now prepared for anything as those feathers weren't a part of the Chunin tournament